Chapter 9:16. We have lived in the base for so many years. Even if you haven't seen it, it doesn't mean others haven't seen it. Kay and his men often hang out with Feng Ling. If they were not men, they would have been discovered long ago, right? What the hell are you thinking about all day long? As soon as Xiao Fei finished speaking, the others glanced at each other and then glanced at Feng Ling and the others. They saw that Tam, Lin Sheng, and Feng Ling were chatting and laughing together. They looked like brothers getting along with each other. Indeed, if they were really women, they should have been discovered long ago. A person could hide in the base for a year or two, but it was impossible to hide for a long time. Could it be that the thing at that time really had something to do with Annie Gielli? Then why did Annie Gielli suddenly disappear in the canteen? Was it because she felt that the thing was seen by these young men and felt too embarrassed, so she left? But it didn't seem to make sense. But now they wanted to find Annie Gielli to ask the truth, but they really couldn't contact her. But Xiao Fei was a drill master after all, and he wouldn't lie to them. Got it, Brother Xiao. It's our fault, they said in a low voice. Xiao Fei nodded coldly. Well, don't spread these irrelevant things around in the future. The recent rumors in 11 base are all from you, right? If there's really something wrong with Feng Ling, the higher-ups would have specially asked Feng Ling to investigate it. There is no need for you to do it, understand? Yes. Don't worry, it won't happen again. Xiao Fei withdrew his gaze from them and walked away, leaving the members of Team 3 with a doubtful and confused expression. The next day, Feng Ling left the base with the U.S. military, accompanied by Kay. No one knew why Feng Ling was suddenly taken away by the U.S. military, but everyone felt that it was not so simple for the U.S. military to take Feng Ling away. A member of the sniper team was invited away by the U.S. military, which had always been secretly displeased with the base. There must be something fishy about it, but no one dared to ask directly. After arriving at the place, Danny Kin arranged a good residence for Feng Ling. Feng Ling went in and saw the environment inside and directly left. This is not a place where I should live. Where does Kay live? I'll go with him. Kay also lives in this building, but since we invited the two of you over, of course we can't let the two of you squeeze into the same room. The room he lives in is also not bad. Don't worry and stay here. I'll talk to the leader later and see how to arrange for you to exchange pointers with our sniper team, Danny Kin said as he opened the door again and gestured for her to enter. However, Feng Ling was determined not to enter. After a while, Kate jumped out of nowhere and suddenly came up the stairs. He waved at her from afar. Feng Ling, come here. My room is very big. It's even a suite. There are 2 beds. Let's live together. All right. Hearing that there were 2 beds, Feng Ling nodded without hesitation and walked straight to Kay, completely ignoring Danny Kin, who had been dragging her in. Seeing that Kay had come to this floor, Danny Kin didn't know what to say. He leaned forward and said, Haven't we arranged rooms for each of you? Brother Kay, do you often live together like this in the base? We're all men. What's wrong with living together? It's not the same bed. Kay took a look at him matter-of-factly. Even if we share the same bed, it's not a problem. Does everyone in the military team live alone? Do you have so many rooms? Don't you have dormitories? That's true. However, for outstanding members like you and little brother Feng Ling, we've always treated them very well. Aside from the generous bonuses, you'll also be given a good residence. There are many outstanding snipers in our sniper team over there. I'll find an opportunity to introduce you to them, Danny Kin said with a smile. That's right. Haha, we're just here to exchange pointers. We don't care about other things. Go ahead. Call us when you need us. Kay said and winked at Feng Ling. Let's go back to the room to make the bed. I see there are new bed sheets in it. Seeing that the 2 of them had left, Danny Kin stood where he was. The smile on his face gradually faded and then turned cold. He narrowed his eyes and turned back to glance at the room Feng Ling had specially arranged for her. With a displeased expression, he walked over and slammed the door with a pong sound. The next morning, just as Danny Kin had said, he arranged for them to spar with the military sniper team. It was a very simple technical exchange, so simple that Feng Ling and Kay could clearly see that they didn't mean it. They only used Type 81 automatic rifles and didn't even take out the military sniper rifles for them to exchange pointers. However, In addition to good performance and high accuracy, this Type 81 automatic rifle also had a small regret, which was that it was very heavy. It was heavier than the largest sniper rifle they had ever seen before. Kay didn't care. He was strong, but he was a little worried about Feng Ling. He suspected that they deliberately didn't take out the sniper rifles, but deliberately took out this kind of thing to deliberately mock Feng Ling's weak body. However, Feng Ling's face was expressionless. She just looked at the confident expressions of the military snipers when they were shooting. She could see that each of them was also first class in strength and physical fitness. Boss Lee always talked about her physical fitness, which was actually very reasonable. When it was Feng Ling and Kay's turn, Kay went to the field first. Although it was a little heavy, it was not inferior to the elite military snipers. When Feng Ling was about to go to the field, Kay walked back from her side and whispered to her in a voice that only she could hear, "The weight of this gun is not right. I just tried other people's guns, and they are lighter than ours. It seems that the butt of our Type 81 automatic rifles is filled with lead or sand. These idiots must have come to humiliate the people of 11 Base. Be careful." Hearing this, Feng Ling walked down calmly to the field. When she picked up the gun they handed to her, as Kay said, it was much heavier than she expected. However, they used the chest ring target, which was one of the common training events in the base. Chapter 9:17. When he finally realized what had happened, he saw that the center of the 5 targets in the field had been hit by the bullets, and the bullets had penetrated the targets behind, shooting down all the bullets that the soldiers had shot into them. Kay's eyes were also slightly watery. Sure enough, Boss and the drill masters had the best taste. Although the gun was very heavy, Feng Ling was still Feng Ling. Even if she was holding a 1,000-pound boulder in her hand, her aim was still better than that of ordinary people. Furthermore, she had fired a few shots in a split second without any hesitation. Furthermore, she was so accurate. The people standing closest to her were probably going to be deafened by the deafening sound. How could such a heavy gun be so fast and powerful? Feng Ling suddenly remembered that in the base, everyone was used to choosing light guns. Even if it was a sniper rifle, no one was willing to touch something that was too heavy because they were afraid that it would be inconvenient to carry something too heavy on their back when they went out on a mission, and it would be too heavy. But at this moment, she suddenly realized that Boss Lee had once commented on them when they were choosing their sniper rifles. Sure enough, we haven't experienced enough yet. So this was what he meant. Heavy guns were not necessarily a burden. On the contrary, perhaps at some times, only these heavier weapons could suppress the wind and various changes on the battlefield, and they were several times more stable than any light guns. She didn't expect that she would have such a harvest this time. The corners of Feng Ling's mouth curved up. When she put away the gun, even if the people in the field were unwilling to applaud, they still had to applaud for the sake of the peace with 11 Base. Kay was even more excited and couldn't wait to rush forward and carry Feng Ling, this big baby, over. However, he kept in mind the look in Boss Lee's eyes that could devour people. Forget about hugging him. It was better to protect him well. After arriving at the military sniper team training camp, Kay followed Feng Ling wherever she went for 3 consecutive days. He even followed her when she went to the toilet. Fortunately, the suite they lived in had a bathroom in each bedroom, so they didn't need to go out. This was not 11 Base. Even if they didn't need to train, they still had to avoid arousing suspicion. If they had nothing to do, they would rather eat instant noodles in their room than go out, let alone go to the cafeteria, here to be watched and criticized behind their backs. On the morning of the 4th day, the military sniper team invited them to join them during the morning training, but during the training, one of them accidentally bumped into a water training pool not far away. Even though Feng Ling was prepared, her lower body still fell into the water. Before her upper body touched the water, Kay quickly grabbed her hand and pulled her out. "Are you all right?" Feng Ling shook her head and turned to look at the group of people. She patted the water on her pants and asked in a voice that only Kay could hear, "Before leaving the base, didn't Boss talk to you? How long did he say we have to stay here?" Kay took a look at her and whispered, 5 days. Hearing these words, Feng Ling immediately knew what to do. She decided not to argue with this group of military trash for the time being. Otherwise, the superficial peace between 11 Base and the military would be broken sooner or later. At that time, it would be really difficult to deal with them. She didn't know what would happen. She took out the cell phone from her trouser pocket and patted it in her hand. My cell phone is wet. She rarely took her cell phone with her in the training camp of 11 Base, but she always took it here. She didn't expect such a scene would happen. Go back and change your clothes. Don't walk around. I'll clean them up here. Kate gave her a wink. Fong Ling nodded. Although her pants were wet and her upper body was fine, it was not appropriate for her to stand here in such a sorry state. She glanced coldly at the crowd and said in a low voice, "Just clean up a little. Don't go too far. Otherwise, we won't be able to explain ourselves when we go back. Don't worry. I won't argue with him too much, but I'll find a chance to have fun," Kay said and shook his wrist as if he didn't care. His actions clearly showed that he was angry. Fong Ling knew that he was reliable, so she didn't care about him and walked back while patting her cell phone. After returning to her residence, she wiped the water on the cell phone, but the water inside probably couldn't evaporate for the time being. Now the screen was black, and she didn't know if it could be used. Now the temperature in Los Angeles was very low. She fell into the water and came out, so her body was very cold, but she remembered Kay's words. She shouldn't be separated from him for too long, so she didn't plan to take a bath. After changing clothes, she went back to pick up the kettle in the room and boiled some hot water for herself to drink. After drinking a few mouthfuls of water, she turned around with the cup and suddenly stopped. She looked at the kettle on the table and then turned to take a look at Kay's room. Her eyelids twitched. Why were there two kettles? Wasn't there only one kettle in this room last night? Did someone come into this room today? And someone specially brought in a new kettle? She remembered Kay said that the fat commander above Danikin often used some dirty means to deal with a man he liked. Could it be? Kay was right. What kind of dirty means could it be? She abruptly put down the cup in her hand and was about to turn around to leave when she suddenly heard the sound of a door opening. The fat commander, who she had only occasionally passed by on the training ground these few days, walked in and looked at her with a smile on his face. "Where are you going, little Fong Ling?" Fong Ling got goosebumps all over her body because of his words. She looked at the fat commander calmly with her dark eyes and said indifferently, "Commander, if you need anything, you can call me and my partner to see you at any time. This is our private room. It doesn't seem appropriate for you to come here. You're so young, but you're so cautious. If I hadn't taken this opportunity to come here, I don't know how long my heart would be itching." The fat commander looked at the androgynous face in front of him that moved his heart at first sight, and his heart itched even more. He stared at Fong Ling, closed the door behind him, and then casually locked it. Hearing the sound of the door being locked, Fong Ling's eyes narrowed slightly, and her hands couldn't help clenching. She turned back and was about to pick up the cell phone on the table. 11 Base had a habit of quickly contacting the emergency contact person on the cell phone. As long as her hand was fast enough, she would definitely be able to inform Kay to come back. However, as soon as her hand reached back, she suddenly remembered that the cell phone was wet. Chapter 9:18. At this moment, the fat commander's cell phone rang. He seemed to be unhappy because of the interference of the ringtone. Shit, he had to turn off his cell phone later. "Commander, I know you're a man who has tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex. That Fong Ling is very guarded and skilled. I've specially put something in her water to ensure that you won't be hurt by this brat. After this is done, you know what to do, right? Don't worry, nothing will go wrong this time. He's just a member of the sniper team. I'll deal with 11 Base. Just don't kill him." On the phone, it was Danikin's voice. Hearing this, the fat commander's face became much better. When he looked up at the handsome little man whose cheeks were faintly blushing, he couldn't wait to pounce on him. "Since you took the initiative to let me in, I'll enjoy it. I'll tell my superiors more about you." The fat commander hung up the phone, turned it off, and threw it back into his trouser pocket. He looked at Fong Ling lustfully, and his eyes became more presumptuous. When he saw Fong Ling shooting in 11 Base, although he had played with many men for so many years, it was the first time that he was so moved by a man. At that time, if this boy wasn't a member of 11 Base, he would definitely take him away. He didn't expect that when he pretended to be reserved, Dannykin would specially bring him back and arrange him here. Looking at this handsome man whose eyes were full of wariness and coldness, and whose complexion became more and more abnormal because of being drugged, the fat commander gave a very satisfied smile. This entire building had been sealed from the outside when he came in. Now, even if Feng Ling wanted to escape, it would be difficult for him to do so. Feng Ling leaned forward slightly, but she quietly took half a step back. Danger. She sensed a very obvious danger. She had to leave immediately, or she might not be able to escape. For so long, she had been safe and sound in 11 base because of her accurate premonition and observation skills, and her instinct to quickly react and avoid every time someone suspected her. However, her body swayed without warning at this moment. The alarm in her heart suddenly rang. Just as her feet stabilized, an indescribable restlessness and warmth began to quickly flow through her limbs and bones. There seemed to be a ball of fire burning in his lower abdomen, and he almost fell down. Water. The water in the pot, just now. It was rare that she didn't check to see if anyone had entered the room because of her restlessness and impatience. When she saw that it was the same kettle as last night, she directly used it. It seemed that there was really something wrong with that pot of water. Out of strength? I think the best sniper in your 11 base is just SOSO. You still foolishly fell into the trap, didn't you? The fat commander approached with a sneer. Are you feverish? Do you really want to be pressed down on the bed and tortured? A chill ran down Feng Ling's spine. She instantly understood what he meant. Was this drug that kind of drug? Feng Ling, who had been drugged, tried her best to stay sober, but when the fat commander stepped forward and grabbed her hair, her body staggered. She closed her eyes and did not struggle violently. She clenched her fists tightly in her sleeves and was abruptly pressed against the sofa by the fat commander. Her head was forced against the surface of the leather sofa, and the stuffy and cold temperature allowed her to barely stay sober. Her hand fumbled in the gap under the sofa. Since she and Kay moved in here, they had been very vigilant, especially Kay, who kept nagging that there was something wrong with Dannykin and the fat commander, and they had to be careful, so the two of them secretly prepared some things everywhere in this room. Although there were not many, Kay happened to hide a sharp dagger in the innermost side of the leather cushion of the sofa. At that time, although Feng Ling didn't intervene, when Kay hid these things, she only glanced at them from the side. Even if it was just a glance, she could remember where everything was placed and which were the tools she could use to defend herself at any time. For example, there was a dagger under the sofa, a wooden stick under the coffee table, an emergency knife under the bed, and even though guns were not allowed in this room, there were a few fountain pens in the study room next door. The tips of the fountain pens were very sharp, and they were not capped. They were just thrown into the shoe cabinet by the door. There was also a small paper knife that Feng Ling borrowed when she went to the office here yesterday afternoon to write some documents. Little beauty, I haven't seen a man as beautiful as you. The fat commander pressed her shoulder hard with one hand. Seeing that she had no strength, he smiled as if he was about to succeed and lowered his head to kiss her on the cheek. The moment he lowered his head, Feng Ling suddenly turned her head away and trembled all over, as if she was so angry that she couldn't stop trembling. Don't be afraid. I will love you well. You must not know that there can be such an ecstasy between men. It's even more wonderful than doing that kind of thing with a woman. I will teach you well. As soon as he finished speaking, the fat commander suddenly exerted force, and the collar of Feng Ling's black combat uniform was immediately pulled open. His fat hands were about to reach for her collar. Feng Ling bit down hard on her lower lip. Even if she bit it until it bled, she still didn't let go. Pain could make her more clear-headed and not easily succumb to this disgusting drug effect. She was willing to risk her life and be ruthless. Since she could remember, she had lived in a wolf's cave and was used to seeing wild beasts tearing and slaughtering each other for a mouthful of food. She had seen the blood on the ground and the life-and-death fights between animals. She grew up drinking wolf's milk and was full of wolf nature. She was taken away when she was 5 years old, but she was trained in the mafia to learn self-protection and to hide herself. In order to survive, she suppressed all her wolf nature and temper. At the age of 12, she was forced to be sent to an orphanage. Those people gave her tranquilizers every day to guard against her. At the age of 13, she entered 11 Base and finally found the life she wanted and the place she wanted to live. She also suppressed the bloodthirst and coldness in her nature. She just wanted to live a good life like a human being with hot food to eat and a warm bed to live in. That was all. But obviously, sometimes people were cold-blooded, more terrible, and deserved to die than wolves. Chapter 919. From the beginning, Feng Ling didn't waste any strength to struggle. The moment she clenched the dagger in her hand, she abruptly turned over, and before the fat commander could react, she forcefully stabbed the dagger at the hand that was pressing her shoulder with all her strength. Ah! The sharp dagger instantly pierced into the back of the fat commander's hand. He screamed in pain and hurriedly let go. Feng Ling supported herself against the edge of the sofa and stood up. Due to the effects of the drug, her feet were unsteady, but she abruptly turned her eyes. Her eyes, which were bloodshot from the drug and anger, were filled with killing intent. She did not give him any time to struggle or retreat. When he held his hand tightly, she abruptly stepped forward and kicked him to the ground. She stepped hard on his round stomach and slapped him hard in the face. Without saying a word, she directly pressed the dagger against the main artery of his neck. The fat commander didn't expect that after being drugged, she could still be so agile and swift. She looked like a thin and powerless boy. The fat commander's hand was in excruciating pain, and because of the coldness on his neck and the bloodthirsty killing intent in Feng Ling's eyes, he trembled all over and the shock in his eyes turned into fear. "How dare you? How dare you hurt me? Do you know who I am?" Feng Ling looked at him with a sneer. "If you say another word of nonsense, no matter who you are, you will be killed by my knife. Do you think I will be afraid? To deal with a scum like you, I'll die with you." "Die with me? You represent 11 Base. If you dare to make trouble here, believe it or not, the people above will report you and make your entire 11 Base suffer." The fat commander's hand that was stabbed kept trembling in pain. His hand was bleeding, but his eyes were still full of arrogance. He forcibly suppressed all his fear and didn't believe that this boy really dared to go against the military. Hearing the words 11 Base, Feng Ling's murderous eyes gradually recovered a trace of calmness, but only a little. At this time, there was a sudden rush of footsteps outside the door. Noticing that Feng Ling hadn't come back for so long, Kay was afraid that something had happened. After all, it was the first time that she had left his sight for more than 10 minutes. When he rushed back, he saw that someone was guarding this building. Noticing that something was wrong, he knocked them unconscious, rushed in, and kicked the door open. The moment she entered the door, she saw this scene. The fat commander was lying on the ground, his hands covered in blood. Feng Ling pressed the fat commander down with bloodshot eyes. She held a blood-stained dagger against his neck. If she used a little more strength, she would be able to kill him. "Feng Ling, what are you doing?" Even if he remembered to protect Feng Ling, this was, after all, a military area. If she dared to attack the commander here, none of them would be able to leave, and 11 Base would definitely be implicated. Before he came back, he had called Bosley. Bosley was on a mission 10 kilometers away with a group of elites from the base. He had planned to come here directly after the mission, so he picked them up 5 days earlier than expected. After telling Bosley the situation, he hung up the phone. Now Bosley hadn't arrived yet. Nothing must happen to him. Feng Ling clutched the fat commander's collar tightly and pressed the dagger against his neck. Her eyes were cold, and she said word by word with hatred, "They drugged me." Kay's heart suddenly skipped a beat, and he suddenly turned to look at the kettle next to him. Understanding what she meant, he frowned. But it seemed that Feng Ling didn't suffer a big loss. Even if he had the urge to kill this scum, he had to bear it for the sake of the overall situation. And it seemed that the fat commander's hand was also hurt by Feng Ling. He hurriedly walked over and pulled Feng Ling up. Feng Ling didn't get up, so Kay pressed her shoulder hard and warned in a low voice, "Boss will be here soon. If there is any dispute, let's talk to Boss. Don't solve it in this way, or it will be very difficult." With that, he lowered his voice and whispered to her ear, "You have hurt the commander. Even if they were dirty first, this is the way of the world. His identity and status don't allow you to do anything too outrageous. Listen to me. Let's wait for boss to come and solve it. Feng Ling still didn't move, staring coldly at the fat commander who was lying on the ground but was smiling smugly at this time. He knew that they didn't dare to do anything for the sake of the overall situation. Feng Ling clenched his collar even more tightly. I'm on the same side as you. Boss asked me to protect you, but we are 11 bases people after all. Feng Ling, you will destroy 11 base. The bloodthirsty light in Feng Ling's eyes gradually faded. She suddenly withdrew the dagger and then let go of the man on the ground. At the same time, she was pulled up by Kay and staggered a step back. She clenched the dagger in her hand, but didn't do anything again. She just looked coldly at the fat commander who stood up with one hand on the ground. She didn't want to say a word and suppressed the fiery restlessness and the urge to kill in her body. Fearing that she couldn't control herself, she suddenly turned around and was about to walk out. Seeing her strange look, Kay didn't know how serious the drug these bastards gave her was. He frowned and was about to go out with her. Two good-for-nothings. Do you really think you can escape from this place? The fat commander looked at Kay, who didn't dare to do anything to him, and Feng Ling couldn't hold on for long because of the drug in her body. After all, he was a man. His face was hurt and his hand was stabbed. Even if he was injured, he couldn't stand it. Bang! Feng Ling's head was abruptly pressed down by the fat commander, who suddenly walked over quickly. She was slammed against the wall by the door, and in an instant warm, crimson liquid flowed down her forehead and stained the wall. Kay's eyes widened. Damn it, what the hell are you doing? He stepped forward, dragged the fat commander away, and was about to help Feng Ling up when the fat commander suddenly took out a gun from his waist and pointed it at the back of Kay's head. Kay paused and stood still, looking worriedly at Feng Ling, who was leaning against the wall and hadn't moved for a long time because of the violent impact on her head. He could only see blood flowing down her forehead. Kay clenched his hands into fists. Chapter 9:20. Feng Ling suddenly roared, kicked back hard, kicked the gun out of the fat commander's hand, took it back, and pointed the muzzle at the fat commander's forehead. The fat commander grabbed Feng Ling's hair tightly. When Feng Ling was pressed against the bloody wall without any signs of struggling, he sneered and looked at A, who was pointing a gun at him. Do you dare to shoot? A's eyes were also filled with coldness and ruthlessness. Let go of her. The base will solve everything rationally with you. It won't do you any good in this way. Let go. The fat commander sneered. Not only did he not let go of her, but he pressed Feng Ling's head against the wall again and again, roaring violently. Shameless brat. It's his honor that I like him today. If I hadn't expected that you would hide a dagger here, he would have been begging for sex under me now. Feng Ling had lost a lot of blood. Her head seemed to be smashed into pieces by the impact. The scream stopped abruptly as the blood spurted out of his neck. The fat commander stared in disbelief at Feng Ling, who dared to kill him. His desire to survive made him open his mouth tremblingly, but as more and more blood flowed from his neck, he couldn't breathe and fell heavily back to the ground. He struggled desperately on the ground for a long time because of the pain and suffocation. After 3 or 4 minutes, he fell to the ground, twitching all over, and blood flowed all over the ground. He fell to the ground and completely motionless. The whole room suddenly became silent with the disgusting smell of blood. Feng Ling's forehead was still bleeding, and so was the dagger in her hand. I stood aside, slowly put down the gun, and looked at the fat commander on the ground. Without checking his breath, he knew that he was dead. This knife was very accurate. Feng Ling had always been very proficient in the acupoints and structure of a human body. She had planned to kill him with this knife without any hesitation. Even though the fat commander had fallen to the ground and blood was gushing out of his neck like water from a high-pressure water gun, the fat commander still couldn't help but feel his blood gushing out. Feng Ling, who was sprayed with blood, looked coldly at the dead man on the ground as if she had just come out of hell. Then she didn't look at Ade but turned to walk out. I came to his senses and suddenly clenched the gun. At this point, he could only protect Feng Ling first. He couldn't care less about other things. He quickly chased after her, only to see that several people from the military had already rushed over. However, before they could even rush up the stairs, Feng Ling had already cut their throats in the blink of an eye. She cut all the way down without even blinking. In an instant, the stairs were filled with pools of blood. Looking at Feng Ling, who stepped down the stairs step by step with numb eyes, I suddenly found that Feng Ling, who had always been silent and calm, was different from what he had imagined. Feng Ling was not a gentle little cutie. She just hid her most violent side perfectly and would never show such a cold-blooded face to others. He didn't know what kind of past Feng Ling had. He only knew that after staying in the base for so many years, the current Feng Ling had completely changed his understanding of her. But no matter how powerful she was, it was impossible for her to kill her way out. There were military snipers everywhere. At any time, someone could fire a shot from a window that they didn't know about, and she would die on the spot. Feng Ling quickly chased after her, but the people who surrounded her outside all dared not approach her because of Feng Ling's terrible killing intent and could only point their guns at her. They also pointed his gun at them and stood behind Feng Ling to protect her all the way out. Just when there were snipers lurking on the nearby building and pointing their guns at the two of them. Suddenly, a black Hummer broke through the defense line set by the military and drove in unimpeded. The speed of the black Hummer was so fast that it caught people off guard. They had to step back to make way for it. When the Hummer was only 100 meters away from Feng Ling and everyone thought that the car was going to hit them, Feng Ling's eyes were still cold, and she didn't show any intention of avoiding it. Or rather, her eyes were not focused at all. There was only obvious killing intent. Whoever dared to come close, she dared to kill them. The tall and cool car suddenly stopped, and several members in the elite combat uniforms of the base jumped out of the car and surrounded both sides of the car. At the same time, they raised their guns and quickly protected Feng Ling and A in the middle, forming a large circle and a small circle. The cold wind was biting cold. The door of the driver's seat opened. Li Nanheng got out of the car, slammed the door, and walked toward them expressionlessly. He walked straight to Feng Ling and looked at Feng Ling, who was white and clean in the base, but now she was covered with blood and looked embarrassed. There seemed to be some kind of wolf in her eyes that he had never seen before, and her eyes almost lost focus. He narrowed his eyes coldly. What happened? Feng Ling didn't speak, but just looked at him. She still hadn't regained her senses and just didn't attack them like she did with Assure. Boss, he said in a low voice behind him. We killed someone. I quickly glanced at him. There was no blood on his body, but the dagger on Feng Ling's body and hand was clear evidence of murder. He immediately knew that the Win A's mouth was probably only Feng Ling. Who did you kill? Li Nanheng was still looking at Feng Ling. A answered, Commander. Chapter 9:21. Seeing that she didn't move, Li Nanheng asked coldly, Feng Ling, who am I? She didn't answer, but it was clear that if she hadn't recognized him as Li Nanheng, she would have also tried to kill him. She recognized him, but she obviously didn't want to. Li Nanheng stared at her, and his eyes suddenly turned cold. Feng Ling didn't move. Li Nanheng reached out again. Instead of grabbing the knife, he reached out to her. I'm here. Don't be afraid. Give me the knife first, and... It was not difficult to see that she was greatly stimulated. Her eyes were full of scarlet and distrust for everyone, including him. You've already killed someone. Aren't you calm enough? Li Nanheng said coldly. If you haven't calmed down, go back to the car and calm down alone. Give me the knife. I'll deal with it. Feng Ling held the knife in her hand tightly, and the wariness in her eyes intensified. Li Nanheng looked at her. Seeing that she still refused to take a step forward, he simply approached her. When the wariness in her eyes increased sharply, he said indifferently, I won't hurt you. Now that such a situation has happened, I won't blame you for what you did, and I can understand that you just wanted to protect yourself. Leave it to me, but you must give me the knife first. You can't carry a sharp weapon with you. Otherwise, in such an irrational situation, even if she didn't kill someone, she was likely to hurt herself. Feng Ling's eyes flickered, and she looked at him doubtfully. Seeing a sign of hesitation in her eyes, Li Nanheng approached again and signaled her to give him the knife with his eyes. Just as Feng Ling raised her hand and was about to put the knife into his hand, she suddenly paused and regretted it. She was about to withdraw her hand, but Li Nanheng suddenly took this opportunity to hold her wrist and twisted it hard, and the knife in her hand instantly fell to the ground. Alarm bells rang in her heart. She hurriedly struggled to fight back, but the man's gaze turned cold. Under her irrational struggle, he raised his hand and hit the most vulnerable part of her neck. In an instant, the girl, covered in blood and in a sorry state, fell weakly into his arms. Seeing that Feng Ling was knocked unconscious by Boss Li, it was shocked. "Boss!" Li Nanheng held the person in his arms and casually took off his coat to cover her. He looked at her coldly. "Help her into the car and wait for me in the car." I hurriedly went to pick up Feng Ling, who had lost consciousness, and turned to look at him. Li Nanheng had already ordered the others to follow him in. Then 3 more cars from the base rushed in, and more than a dozen people got out of the cars to protect Ah and Feng Ling. Until I safely sent Feng Ling into the car, no one could approach. As soon as Li Nanheng walked in, he saw Danny Kin and the other military leaders surrounding the room with shocked expressions. "If Feng Ling and they can walk out of here alive today, my name will fall." Before he could finish his words, he was pushed aside by the people behind Li Nanheng. Li Nanheng did not even bother to look at him. After the obstacle before him was removed, he directly walked in. Danny Kin staggered from the push and almost slammed into the wall. He was filled with disbelief and anger as he turned to look at Li Nanheng and the elite members of the base behind him. He cursed under his breath and hurriedly followed them in. Danny Kin looked at the imposing and noble figure standing before the corpse of the fat commander and immediately approached with large strides. "Mr. Li, if you're a reasonable person, then let's reason with each other. No matter what happens, we can't kill people in the military base. Besides, the base and the military base have always been very friendly with each other. We don't wish for any friction to occur between us. But now, your subordinates have killed someone in our territory. Tell me, what should we do? The deceased is our commander with the highest authority. This matter will soon reach the upper echelons. Do you think you can suppress them all by yourself?" Chapter 922. Whether or not I have to forcefully suppress this matter is another matter. Li Nanheng looked at the fat commander's corpse on the ground. He looked at the wound on the back of his hand and the fatal cut on his neck. His gaze was cold, and his voice was cold. "No matter what happens, this Li doesn't think so. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I know my subordinates very well. For things to develop to such a vicious end, there must be an even more vicious premise that they can't bear." Speaking up to here, the man turned his eyes. His handsome face swept indifferently over the furniture and decorations in the surroundings. He then looked at the obvious bloodstain on the wall by the door. Everyone stopped what they were doing because of his gaze, including Danny Kin. When he heard that he intended to investigate the cause of the incident, his expression also froze. "This Li is right here. If you want to investigate who is responsible, find me directly." Li Nanheng stood there as though there was no one else around. His eyes examined the other wounds on the fat commander's body. Finally, he furrowed his brows coldly. To be killed by Feng Ling with a single stab, to provoke Feng Ling to the point where she almost lost her rationality, the treatment she suffered earlier was definitely not as simple as being drugged. She knew how to restrain her emotions too well. There must be a reason for her to be provoked to such an extent. Li Nanheng turned his head and swept another glance at the bloodstain on the wall. The bloodstain seemed to be caused by someone's head being knocked against the wall. He recalled the blood on Feng Ling's forehead earlier. His gaze abruptly turned coldly to Danny Kin, whose eyes were currently somewhat evasive. "If there is a reason for this matter, and the reason lies with your military, then we will do as you say. We will reason with reason and evidence. We will carefully investigate just what exactly is the reason for provoking these 2 people who have always been quiet and never stirring up trouble in our base to such an extent. If the entire reason lies with my people, don't worry. This Li will definitely not let them off lightly." Danikin's expression was cold. "What you mean is, even if the problem lies with your 2 subordinates, you don't intend to leave them here for us to deal with. Or do you intend to take them away? Feng Ling and A are both members of my base. Since they have committed crimes, I should be the one to personally bring them to surrender or be punished. I'll deal with them as they should. Otherwise, you should tell the whole truth no matter where you are. You definitely can't let those who have done wrong go, but from your attitude, it seems like you want to keep them here. What, you want to execute them in a military area? Li Nanheng's tone was neither high nor low, and there was not the slightest hint of arrogance or arrogance. However, his aura was not weak either. His attitude was completely calm, and no one could find any fault with it. Instead, it seemed that Danny Kin was a little too angry and impatient. The contrast between true guilt and calmness couldn't be more obvious. How do you want to investigate the truth? Now, our commander is dead here, and your men are planning to charge out unscathed. The truth is right before our eyes. Wrong. I'm afraid you've misunderstood the words completely unscathed. Li Nanheng glanced at him mildly. The wound on Feng Ling's head and the fact that he seems to have been drugged and is in a delirious state. Is this completely unharmed? Danny Kin was instantly speechless. Although the other members of the military who didn't understand the situation were on their side, when they heard this, the room fell silent for half a minute. Everyone looked at each other, their expressions subtle. Could it be that the commander had his eyes on the people of the base? Did he end up like this because of their resistance? If this was truly the reason, and if the person in charge of the base insisted on investigating, then the outcome of this matter was really hard to say. In an instant, no one dared to speak. Instead, they all secretly glanced toward Danikin. Danikin's expression was ugly as well. He had never imagined that offering Feng Ling to the commander would end up costing the commander's life. He was already unable to bear the consequences. If this matter was discovered, his future would be completely ruined. Seeing his clearly unstable expression, Li Nanheng stood there and narrowed his eyes dangerously. The easiest way to deal with this kind of sudden murder scene without any warning or motive is to check the surveillance footage and see what exactly happened in this room in the past half an hour. Danikin instantly sneered coldly. You think you can check the surveillance footage just because you want to? This room is something that our military very sincerely allowed Feng Ling and Ah to stay in. Since they are staying here, how could we possibly place surveillance footage in this room? Not only will this appear very insincere, it will also violate the privacy of your base members. Even if you go to the surveillance room, it will be the same. They won't be able to take out the surveillance footage in this room. Is that so? Li Nanheng curved his lips and sneered. Danikin stood there and continued to put on an act. He sighed and said, although we also wish to know what exactly happened in this room, we can't conclude that Feng Ling was drugged just based on a few words of yours, Mr. Li. You said that he was injured, but I think it's possible that our commander injured him in self-defense. Right now, your base has no evidence, and you're still trying to deny it to a dead person. The person is lying right in front of you. How else do you want to deny it? Boss! All of a sudden, the sound of hurried footsteps came from outside. An elite member of the base who had rushed to the military surveillance room rushed in with a disc in his hand. When no one expected him to do so, he wrapped up the laptop he had just taken from the car, opened it, and inserted the disc into it. Danikin saw this action and immediately turned to look at the few people who had also rushed in. He saw that they were the people he had sent to destroy the surveillance footage. From their expressions, it was clear that the base's people had rushed in first. Just as he was about to speak, he discovered that the base's people had actually called over a leader who was even more powerful than the commander. The leader had just arrived after hearing the news. When he saw the corpse on the ground, he immediately frowned. At the same time, he turned to look at Li Nanheng's cold expression and the surveillance footage that was being played on the laptop. The computer screen instantly displayed the high-definition surveillance footage. However, it was clear that Feng Ling and Ah both knew that there might be surveillance footage in this room. Thus, when they entered the door to change, they had brought their clothes into the bedroom to change and were not captured. And the entire incident happened in the living room that was under surveillance. From when Feng Ling changed her clothes and entered the room to drink water, to when she noticed that the water was strange and kept checking the water bottle in her hand, to when the fat commander suddenly barged in, to when the two of them got into a verbal argument, to to when Feng Ling staggered unsteadily and the fat commander suddenly pounced on her and pressed her down on the sofa. Chapter 923. Following that, scene after scene of what had just happened in this room unfolded before everyone's eyes. It included Feng Ling's agitated attempt to kill the commander, only to be stopped by A who had rushed in. Then, Feng Ling gave up on killing him and turned to leave, only to be grabbed by the commander's hair and slammed against the wall. Finally, the fat commander grabbed Feng Ling's head with one hand and pointed his gun at A's head with the other. Such a scene caused Daniken's expression to freeze. He turned to look at the leader who had watched the entire scene. He saw the leader's furrowed brows, and his face instantly turned ashen. Feng Ling, who had maintained her rationality and was planning to leave, was completely enraged by the fat commander. She turned back and slashed his neck without hesitation. All of a sudden, no one knew why, but the air in the room seemed to have suddenly frozen. Daniken turned to look at Li Nanheng. That handsome and extraordinary face was covered with an unprecedented coldness. The man's voice was also frighteningly low. He enunciated each word, causing one's heart to tremble. Mr. Daniken, the truth is right here. It is still unclear who drugged Feng Ling, but from the surveillance footage, it can be seen that after he was initially bullied and provoked, he did not do anything, nor did he make any aggressive defensive movements. However, the commander continued to pester him and used such force to smash his skull open to injure him. Although we couldn't hear what was going on, it was clear that the commander had said a lot to infuriate Feng Ling and Ado, who had maintained their calm throughout. Yet, they still did not make a move. In the end, why did my men choose to offend the military to kill him? I believe that Mr. Daniken knows the truth better than I do. What exactly happened? Wasn't Feng Ling the sniper sent by the base for a friendly match? How could something like this happen? The military leader's confusion at the start turned to rage, causing Daniken's face to gradually turn pale. He didn't expect the situation to develop to this point. When he saw that something had happened, he thought that he could just send someone to destroy the evidence. But he didn't expect Li Nanheng to be so shrewd. He immediately sent someone to stop the surveillance. At this point, Li Nanheng had clearly placed all the blame on him after the death of the fat commander. Daniken simply laughed it off and said, "Leader, you also know that the commander likes men. Back then, he used the condition of demoting me to force me to help him arrange things for Feng Ling. He wanted to settle this little brother Feng Ling. I was really hindered by the commander's authority, so I cooperated with him and helped him purge the people here. I also helped him arrange the entire process of Feng Ling returning to his room alone and put some drugs in the kettle. But I was really forced. The commander is so many ranks higher than me. I really couldn't do anything about his orders." The military leader instantly looked at him coldly. Before he could speak, Li Nanheng suddenly chuckled. Then, Li Nanheng walked toward Daniken. He reached out and grabbed Daniken by the collar. His eyes were so cold that they could freeze people to death. "Who do you think you are? How dare you use such a despicable method to drug my men? And you even used my men to curry favor with your superiors? And Mr. Li, let's talk this out." The evidence was right in front of him, and the military leader was also present. Daniken couldn't explain himself even if he wanted to. He could only quickly show his weakness. The one who was even more enraged was the military leader. They had always been at odds with the base, and the United Nations had always been suppressing them. They never expected that their own men would dare to use such a method to challenge the dignity and authority of the base. Right now, sacrificing a commander was not important. What was important was that someone from the base had killed someone here. This matter could not be covered up, and the reason for the murder was actually such a filthy and disgusting business. Right now, Daniken could only place all his hopes on the military leader. He hurriedly said, "I will investigate this matter thoroughly. I can't hear anything from the surveillance cameras. I can only see that little brother Feng was stubborn and refused to comply." The commander said that it had been a long time since he met such a fair and beautiful young man, and he wanted him. However, I can't be sure what the commander said to agitate him. I was also forced to do this. Give me a chance. I will definitely investigate this matter thoroughly. He's already dead. How are you going to investigate? The military leader angrily rebuked. Li Nanheng paid no heed to his words. He casually raised his hand and called out to a newcomer. You, tell me, what exactly happened? The newcomer did not expect the boss of the base to call out his name. As a newcomer, he didn't understand many things and was timid. Seeing that something had happened to Danikin, he did not dare to side with him. He directly said, I am not too sure either. However, Danikin is indeed very close to the commander. He would often pick out good-looking men from among us newcomers and send them over to the commander. However, there doesn't seem to be any particularly fair and beautiful men in this batch, so the commander has always looked down on them. His temper has always been very bad. However, I heard that Danikin has indeed been working very hard to satisfy the commander's desires. The newcomer forced himself to finish speaking because he realized that with every word he said, Danikin's gaze would turn colder. Li Nanheng's icy eyes turned toward him at the same time. It was as though he would freeze to death in the next second. Li Nanheng did not waste any words with anyone. He abruptly grabbed Danikin's collar and pressed him against the fat commander's corpse. The Li family had several generations of military background. Their way of doing things had never been gentle. Right now, the man's expression was as cold and ruthless as iron. He did not show the slightest bit of mercy. In the beginning, you brought my men here under the pretext of exchanging pointers and demonstrations. In reality, your goal was to present them to your commander, and such Li Nanheng was simply too frightening. His usual indifference was gone. Instead, his eyes were filled with a bloodthirsty coldness, especially when he saw Feng Ling's clothes being torn apart and how her head was slammed against the wall time and time again. She did not move at all. His hands were incomparably vicious. Danikin's entire body was trembling. Right now, the military leader was watching by the side, but did not make a sound. Clearly, because Li Nanheng was present, everyone had seen the surveillance footage and could not deny it. There was also no way to destroy the evidence. The two sides were evenly matched. Now that such a thing had happened and the evidence was found, the military would not be able to obtain any benefits. Instead, they would suffer a huge loss in public opinion. Chapter 924. Thus, the leader would definitely not protect him right now. Danikin did not expect Li Nanheng to appear at such a timely moment despite being so busy. The heavens really wanted him dead. Even the commander's skills are so poor. You can't even compare to a newbie in the sniper team. You want to touch my men? Are you even worthy? Li Nanheng lowered his waist, his voice extremely cold. The commander died a worthy death. If you're loyal to your master, why don't you accompany him? Danikin trembled all over, but no matter how he struggled, his body was still firmly pressed against the fat commander's body that had yet to completely cool down. The thick scent of blood made him nauseous, and the fear in his heart made him unable to care about anything else. He struggled to turn to the leader who had been frowning silently by the door. Save me. The leader hesitated for a moment before saying, Mr. Li, this is a dispute between 11 Base and the military. Since you're already here, we'll first send the commander's body to the forensic doctor. As for other matters, out of respect for Mr. Li and 11 Base, why don't we move to a clean place to discuss it? Right now, no matter what the cause is, someone has already died, and the person who died is our military commander. This matter cannot be so easily determined. We still need more time. Of course, there is no right or wrong. It is only self-defense, Li Nanheng replied coldly. Everyone in the room did not dare to make a sound. The leader frowned at Li Nanheng's reasonable and clear attitude that he would not allow Feng Ling to bear the responsibility for the murder. But our commander was killed by a member of your base just like that. Are we just going to let this matter rest? Do you think it is so simple to kill someone in a military base? Li Nanheng did not turn back. He continued to watch Danikin struggle against the fat commander's body. His military boots pressed against his back even harder, causing Danikin's entire face to turn pale from the pain. Drugging someone is already not simple. Naturally, killing someone is even more so. This Li cannot absolve himself from the blame for such a serious matter. But since we must pursue this matter, we might as well pursue it to the end. With that, Li Nanheng tossed the body to the ground. Those words, without the slightest warmth, caused Daniken's entire body to stiffen. His gaze wavered, his face still pressed against the fat commander's corpse. He lay there limply, unable to get up for a long time, his face frighteningly pale. What Li Nanheng meant was that not only would he not deliberately hide the fact that Feng Ling killed people, but he was also happy to cooperate with them to continue to blow up this matter. In the end, this so-called investigation to the end was to find out all the truth, including many things that had been hidden within the military for so many years. If they really wanted to be investigated, they might all be brought out. No matter how one looked at it, the military would be the one to suffer in the end. Even if 11 Base didn't gain any advantage in this matter, the military wouldn't have it easy either. Neither side would have a good time. Daniken knew that he was done for. Now that the leader was looking at him with a cold expression, he knew that he was done for. Li Nanheng didn't need to say anything. Just because Li Nanheng said that he would pursue this matter to the end, it was destined that the leader would choose to sacrifice the commander to suppress the whole matter. And most likely, he would not pursue 11 Base's responsibility. At the same time, Li Nanheng clicked on the computer twice, and the scene of Feng Ling killing the commander slowed down. In the slow-motion scene, Feng Ling's face was covered in blood, and the wound on her head was obvious. However, her speed was so fast that it left everyone speechless. Furthermore, she had accurately slit his throat. It was a simple yet fatal stab. At this moment, the stab showed that when her head was slammed against the wall, she was truly enduring and did not even struggle. However, in the end, it was the fat commander who brought about his own death, forcing the person who had endured to the extreme to the point where she could no longer endure. Looking at this kind of hand speed and such precise control over all the organs of the human body, every single person present, regardless of whether they were members of the military or the elites of 11 Base, was stunned. What followed was an uproar of disbelief. Who would have thought that a new member of the sniper team who had just joined their base for a few years would have such beautiful skills? Even this kind of hand speed that was impossible for ordinary humans to achieve was so easy for her. This kind of speed was as though she was born with the sharpness and speed of a certain wolf. No one could compare to her. Everyone instantly fell silent. Li Nanheng appeared to be someone who cherished talent. If his subordinates were wronged, he would definitely not sit idly by. Right now, the person who was wronged was the member with the most potential in 11 Base's sniper team. It was reasonable for him to protect her with all his might. After watching the slow-motion scene, Li Nanheng strode out. No one dared to block his extremely cold back. Not to mention Daniken, who was on the ground. Even the leader standing by the door paled slightly. He then turned to look at the corpse on the ground. Thinking about how this new member of 11 Base was already so terrifying, if there was a day when the military really clashed with 11 Base, it was really uncertain who would emerge victorious. With the current situation of the United Nations unclear, the military could not act on their own. If they really clashed with 11 Base directly, especially Li Nanheng. Chapter 925. Walking out of the building, they returned to where the Hummer was parked. A lot of people had already gathered around them. The military members who had been pointing their guns at the Hummer had been silently confronting the elite team of the base, who had also raised their guns in response for a long time. Seeing that the black Hummer Feng Ling was sitting and was surrounded by layers of military, Li Nanheng's straight back was like a pine tree in the mountains, making people feel no warmth at all. His eyes were dangerously cold. He slowly narrowed his eyes, which were as deep as an icy pond. "Boss." When the elite team member saw that he had returned, he quickly walked to his side and whispered, "These people don't intend to let us go." "How is Feng Ling?" Li Nanheng asked in a low voice. "I'm not sure. Kay hasn't come out since he helped Feng Ling into the car. He probably hasn't woken up yet." Just as the elite squad members were about to say something, the incomparably cold and noble man in front of them strode into the crowd of armed men and grabbed the collar of one of the military squad members who was leading the group. Bang! The gun in the man's hand shook due to the sudden force and fell to the ground. The others didn't expect such a scene to happen. Li Nanheng kicked him to the ground. Get lost. Just at the moment when the military members glared at him, the big leader, who hurried over from behind, also appeared. Seeing that the big leader didn't seem to have any intention of stopping them, he knew that the people of 11 Base must be released safely today. None of them could be detained. But just now, they heard that it was 11 Base who killed their commander. In this case, how could they let him go? Li Nanheng tossed the phone to an elite team member. Contact the United Nations Department of Justice and relevant lawyers. Ask them to come and investigate this case. If necessary, 11 Base and Feng Ling will fully cooperate with the investigation. Right now, Feng Ling is seriously injured. 11 Base will bring her back for treatment. She's in our hands and won't go missing. Under the muzzles of the military members, the black Hummer sped away without hesitation, raising a cloud of dust on the ground. The choking of the black Hummer almost made the military members cry. They looked in disbelief at the cars that took the people away so easily. In the car, the blood on Feng Ling's face and hands had been wiped clean by Kay with a wet tissue, but the wound on her forehead was very obvious. There was even some blood oozing out of the wound. Although it was not much, it could be seen that it was very serious. Feng Ling had been unconscious. Kay was a little worried and turned to look at Li Nanheng, who threw the lighter forward after sitting in the car and didn't speak again. Boss. Kay knew that even if he didn't know how Boss protected them this time, he must be very angry. After all, it was really not a small matter to kill someone in the military area. It was already a miracle that he successfully brought them out of the military area. When Kay spoke, his voice was a little apologetic. I'm really sorry, boss. We didn't expect things to turn out like this. These days, Feng Ling has been in front of me, but I didn't expect that such a big thing would happen when she went back to her room to change clothes. No need to explain. I've seen the surveillance footage. Li Nanheng didn't look back, but his voice was cold. Kay paused. Then, boss, you should know that Feng Ling was also forced to do something. In the beginning, she actually didn't, I know. Li Nanheng turned back and looked indifferently at Feng Ling, who was leaning against the back seat with her eyes closed and hadn't woken up yet. Glancing at the wound on her forehead, Li Nanheng picked up his cell phone and called Qin Sighting, who was in the United States these days. Without any nonsense, he just said coldly, Los Angeles, 99, Fansby Avenue, 10th floor, come over in half an hour. Bring the medical kit. With that, he directly hung up the phone. Kay didn't know where this 99 Fansby was, but he usually didn't have much contact with Boss Lee. In the base, Boss Lee never told anyone about him, so he could only guess that it was Boss Lee's private residence. However, in this situation, Feng Ling really couldn't directly return to the base, and it was not good to go to the hospital. It was best to ask a familiar doctor to treat Feng Ling's wound. Kay turned to look at Feng Ling, who had been unconscious. If that fat commander smashed her head a few more times, her skull would really crack. I've never seen such a crazy person, but boss, she has been unconscious for a long time. She should be fine, right? If she is, she won't have the strength to kill people and rush out. Li Nanheng's voice was low and cold. He didn't seem to be overly concerned. He just said lightly, I hit the back of her neck very hard, so she can't wake up for the time being. Let her calm down while she is unconscious. Otherwise, can you suppress her with that indifferent gaze of hers just now? Kate immediately fell silent. Just now, Feng Ling's gaze was indeed very unusual. It was as if she had changed into another person. If she did not have any mental illness, it could only mean that she was the real her. It was just that she had been hiding under the gentle and quiet surface, but in the end, she was still provoked by the fat commander. Such a thin body had such a terrible explosive force, like a bloodthirsty wolf in the jungle. Kay sighed, picked up a wet tissue to wipe the blood on Feng Ling's ear, and then looked at her clothes. Boss, I won't wipe the blood on Feng Ling's body. I don't know if she had any other injuries before I went in. The doctor you called must give her a thorough examination. Li Nanheng didn't respond, but looked through the rearview mirror at Feng Ling, who had been quietly leaning against the car door. He recalled the look she had given him just now. He still remembered that glimpse in the sauna room of the orphanage. At that time, he couldn't see her face clearly and could only see her eyes, which were half blocked by the short bangs on her forehead. Just like that gaze just now, it was cold as if there was no human emotion, only a kind of anger and instinct to escape. What kind of experience could make a 13-year-old girl have such a gaze? When they arrived at the apartment of 99 Fansby Avenue, the car stopped downstairs. Lee Nanheng asked the others to get out of the car, and he personally opened the back door and carried the unconscious Feng Ling out. Kay and the others watched by the side. No one dared to speak, nor did they dare to follow in. Until Lee Nanheng carried Feng Ling into the door of the apartment. They looked at each other outside the door. This place was Boss's own residence. Boss directly carried Feng Ling into his place. Chapter 926. Feng Ling remained unconscious the entire way. Lee Nanheng carried her into the condo and placed her on the bed. He was about to take off all her blood-stained clothes, but when he unbuttoned her coat, he caught a glimpse of her slightly open blouse. He hesitated for a moment and only took off her coat. He could see the outline of the chest wrapping cloth hidden under the thin blouse. Although the outline of the cloth wasn't obvious, those who didn't know what it was would only think it was another piece of clothing. Thankfully, it was only her jacket that was stained with blood. The rest of her body was relatively clean. He reached out and unbuttoned her shirt one by one. Originally, he planned to untie her chest cloth so that she could breathe more easily. However, when he unbuttoned her shirt, he saw the white cloth wrapped tightly around her body and paused. Knowing she was a woman was one thing. Seeing the chest wrapping around her body and seeing the truth of the matter was another matter. The man was silent for a moment. He turned back to wash a towel and wiped her face, neck, and hands again. After confirming that the sticky blood on her body was gone, he pulled down her pants. The young girl's legs were slender and white, straight like jade. Without the disguise that she usually wore, she just lay there quietly. Because of the medicinal effect in her body was boiling hot, and if he were to accidentally touch her, he would feel a scalding sensation. Lee Nanheng took the blood-stained trousers and walked out. He threw them away, picked up his cell phone, and dialed a number. Xiao Su, bring me a set of Feng Ling's combat uniform. It has to be exactly the same as what she is wearing now. Xiao Su was a little confused. Oh, okay. Exactly the same why? Does it have to be exactly the same? What is the emphasis point of the exact same? But since Boss said so, Xiao Su could only hurry to find it. He remembered that the clothes Feng Ling wore seemed to be the autumn uniforms of 11 Base. She should have several. After making the call, Lee Nanheng did not immediately return to the bedroom. Instead, he picked up the lighter on the coffee table, tilted his head, and lit a cigarette. As the white smoke lingered, the feeling of abstinence became stronger. The room was very quiet. Feng Ling was unconscious in the bedroom, and Lee Nanheng was smoking in the living room. Time passed bit by bit until Xiao Su hurriedly brought the clothes over. Lee Nanheng took the clothes and casually threw the blood-stained clothes he had just helped Feng Ling take off to him. Dispose of them. Xiao Su took the clothes and realized that Boss had taken off Feng Ling's clothes. But at this time, no one dared to gossip. Everyone knew what had happened, so no one dared to be negligent. Xiao Su didn't say much, nodded, and left with the clothes. The man took the clean clothes, turned back, pressed the cigarette into the ashtray, and stood still by the coffee table. His cold aura of a young master of a warlord family was instantly revealed. Qin's sighting had already driven over and would soon come with a medicine box. Lee Nanheng brought the combat uniform into the bedroom and helped her put it on again, in case she woke up and was shocked because her secret was discovered. The sky outside the window was dark. In the dim light of the bedroom, the girl was unconscious. Her face was pale, and there was a large scar on her forehead. Under the light, Lee Nanheng already felt that he was the one who had been drugged. From the little girl's feet to her legs, bit by bit, until the pants were buttoned and the belt was buckled for her. The man's body was already covered in a thin layer of sweat. Then, just as he was about to button up her blouse, when he touched the cloth on her chest, the man's hand paused. He looked at the unconscious girl and the deep and obvious ravine that was squeezed out of the cloth because it was wrapped too tightly. He suddenly thought of the feeling he had felt before. At this time, everything that popped up in his mind was based on instinct, and these instincts were almost impossible to suppress. He should have known the truth and put her safely by his side instead of letting her join the sniper team and stand under so many people's gazes to attract attention. He should have stripped her clean clothes long ago. Otherwise, who knew how long this little liar would lie to him? When he looked at the girl's sleeping face, some emotions erupted like a volcano and could no longer be hidden in his eyes. Feng Ling, who was unconscious, had no idea what kind of environment she was in, nor did she know that she was about to be slaughtered by the man she had been guarding against. However, her natural acuity and instinct made her feel some kind of unknown danger in her sleep. Even though she was unconscious, she still frowned slightly. However, her eyelids were very heavy, and her consciousness was blurred. Her body was unusually hot, and she could not open her eyes no matter what. She thought that she could hide it again and again since she had hidden it for so long. However, Li Nanheng had not been at the base in the past few years, which gave her a chance to continue deceiving him. However, time and time again, coincidences and suspicions, coupled with an accidental mistake, in the end, such a fatal secret was completely placed in front of the man's eyes. If it were any other time, it would not be so easy for Li Nanheng to see the clothes she was wearing and see her clearly. She was quiet and obedient, which was rare for her to be unconscious. Li Nanheng looked down at the girl on the bed, who seemed to be conscious but could not wake up. He looked at her fair face under her black hair and the glaring wound on her forehead. If the doorbell hadn't suddenly rang at this moment, he would have taken off her pants again. After all, she was also drugged. After all, it was not the first time he wanted to be a beast like this. After all, since she dared to kill someone, she dared to bear the consequences. Since he had helped her, she should lie on his bed after doing something wrong and cry fiercely in the way he wanted. Otherwise, he would be too sorry for the 220 kilometers per hour speed and the soaring blood pressure when he drove into the military area. The man's eyes were dark, and he forcibly suppressed the desire that even he felt was a beast. He casually buttoned up Feng Ling's thin shirt, covered the chest wrapping cloth inside, and then covered her with a quilt. He turned to open the door. However, as soon as the man turned to walk out of the bedroom, the girl on the bed could not suppress the drug in her body and suddenly let out a very light, cat-like moan. It was a very small sound, but it shook him to the point that he staggered and almost knocked into the door. Li Nanheng endured it. When he heard the doorbell again, he suddenly walked out with a dark expression, opened the door, and said coldly to the handsome man in a white shirt outside the door who was carrying a medicine box, "Can't King come later?" Sheen's sighting. Chapter 9:27. Are doctors so punctual now? Li Nanheng's face was dark. Sheen's sighting. Didn't King say you want me to arrive in half an hour? And you sound as though it's a matter of life and death. At the same time, Sheen sighting glanced inside. What's wrong? Is there a situation? I'll go downstairs for a cup of coffee before coming up. Li Nanheng turned around expressionlessly and gestured for him to come in. Come in. Save them first. Sheen sighting glanced at him and snorted. I've never seen you so nervous before. Who's injured? Is it a man or a woman? Don't talk nonsense. Let's go in and save them. Li Nanheng turned and went in. Sheen sighting sighed with a smile. It's not like you to be so mysterious. However, human lives were at stake, and now was not the time to joke around. The man in the white shirt casually rolled up his sleeves and walked in. Seeing Feng Ling lying quietly on the bed and the serious wound on her forehead, Sheen sighting walked straight to the bed to check her wound. After checking, he turned to Li Nanheng. How did you get hurt? How long have you been unconscious? Sheen sighting took the phone and saw that it was a surveillance video that had just been sent to his phone. After watching it as quickly as possible, he did not say anything, put down the phone, and rummaged through the medicine box to deal with it. At the same time, he said, You only asked me to bring the medicine box over, so I thought it was just a skin injury. The collision is so serious. I'm not sure if his brain is affected or if he has a concussion. I know it's not convenient for the people of 11 Base to go to the hospital, but you'd better take time to have a checkup. I knocked her out. Li Nanheng stood by the bed and said lightly. Qin Siding's hand that was disinfecting the wound on Feng Ling's forehead paused slightly. He turned to look at the man with a calm and indifferent expression and then withdrew his gaze to continue treating the wound. I was wondering why she was in a coma for so long when she has the strength to kill someone. I think she's been traumatized. I don't want her to hurt herself. Qin Siding focused on checking Feng Ling's other injuries. When he was about to lift the quilt, Li Nanheng glanced at his hands and said coldly, "If you see anything you shouldn't see, remember to keep your mouth shut." Qin Siding paused, put the quilt back, and put his hand on Feng Ling's wrist. After feeling her pulse for a while, he snorted. No wonder he has such short hair. He's clearly a young man, but no matter how I look at him, he looks like a woman. He's really a woman. Li Nanheng caught a glimpse of his action and frowned slightly. You also know how to feel the pulse. Qin Siding returned to the medicine box and picked up the medical disinfectant cotton and other medical drugs. He did not look at him. Since I've stepped into the medical world, I should understand everything that needs to be understood. For me, Chinese medicine and Western medicine are both compulsory courses. She's the heir of the Qin family, but she abandoned business to become a doctor. That woman, Shi Nianj, is really a scammer. Hearing this, Qin Siding's expression did not change at all. He continued to deal with the wound on Feng Ling's head and said, "Although I'm a doctor and don't think too much about the patient's body, seeing that you don't want me to see it, I won't touch it. After I leave, remember to check if there are any other injuries on her body. I've seen the video just now. From the looks of the fight, even if there are injuries, they should only be bruises from bumping into something. It shouldn't be too serious. The wound on her head needs to be changed twice a day. When it's time to change the dressing, I'll remind you. I'll leave the dressing here, and you can change it yourself." Since Shi Nianj left, Qin Siding, who was originally silent and distant, became even more reticent. Especially when the people around him mentioned that woman's name, he always avoided mentioning it. However, when he saw Qin Siding smear the medicine on the wound on Feng Ling's forehead and saw the large bloody wound on the wall, a desire to blow up those people in the military region surged in his heart. The commander should be thankful that he was killed by a knife. Otherwise, if he fell into his hands, who knew how he would torture him to death? After temporarily pasting the medical gauze on the wound, Qin Siding examined Feng Ling's hands and arms. There were no other obvious injuries. There was only a bloodstain on her palm caused by the dagger. It was not too serious. It could be seen that although she was in a hurry, her skills were not bad. She did not injure herself too much. When disinfecting and applying medicine on the wound on her palm, Qin Siding saw a thin callus on Feng Ling's palm. From the position of the callus, he could tell that it was a member of the 11 Base who held a gun all year round. After watching for a moment, he said in a low voice, "What's wrong with her? You hit her in the base? Such a beautiful girl. Her hair is so short, and there are thin calluses on her hands. Is this how you treat a little girl?" Li Nanheng stood by the bed, looking down at Qin Siding's movements when he applied medicine on her, and did not explain with a dark face. When he placed Feng Ling's hand back on the bed, Qin Siding stood up, packed up the medicine box, and prepared to leave. "You're leaving?" Li Nanheng glanced back at him. "Otherwise, should I stay and drink with you? Your short-haired little beauty's pulse is abnormal, and your whole body is burning, and your face is red. It's obvious that you've been drugged. If I don't leave, do I have to stay here and watch you act as the antidote?" Li Nanheng immediately retracted his gaze stiffly, and then said stiffly, "Goodbye. I won't send you off." Qin Siding sneered, and when he changed his shoes in front of the door, he said, "When she wakes up, remember to take her to the hospital for some simple examinations. Just check if she has a concussion. I've touched the wound on her forehead earlier. It's not a big problem, but that kind of violent impact should give her a headache for a few days. Pay more attention." With that, Qin Siding very calmly and tactfully did not intend to continue being a third wheel. Without waiting for him to respond, he left and very considerately closed the door outside. The room returned to silence, and only Feng Ling, who was in a coma, appeared to be quiet and motionless, but gradually began to breathe rapidly. Her cheeks, which had been pale earlier, were indeed slightly red, and even her neck seemed to be suffused with a rosy color. Li Nanheng walked over, lifted the quilt, and was about to check if there were any other injuries on her body. The buttons on the girl's thin shirt were unbuttoned one by one. The man's eyes darkened, and even his breathing changed. He, who had always been calm, suddenly felt thirsty at this moment. Very, very thirsty. The light in the room was emitted from the wall lamp in front of the bed, and it was slightly dim. Huh! The man casually turned on the chandelier in the room. When the dazzling light lit up, he told himself that it was only to check her other injuries. Chapter 928. The man walked back to the bed and looked at the unconscious girl on the bed. One end of the white chest wrapping cloth was lifted. Under the man's slender fingers, there was some kind of fiery desire that could not be suppressed. He forcefully suppressed it, but he could still feel the agitation in his blood. The chest wrapping cloth fell down, and the girl's fair and beautiful body was right in front of him. All the answers were not as direct as seeing it with his own eyes. This scene seemed to indicate the beginning of something. A certain kind of evil fire in his body came from all directions, drowning him, making him feel as though he was going to tear the person in front of him into pieces in the next moment. Even the agitation and heat, the long-suppressed things, were all transmitted to a point between his legs. Li Nanheng looked at the girl on the bed and raised his hand to tug at his collar. He did not see any injuries on her body, but her clean, fair, and exquisite skin made it so that even though he knew he should not look at it, he still looked at it. He could not bear to shift his gaze even half an inch away. His fingers touched her waist, probably wanting to confirm that all of this was real, and slowly moved up. His fingertips passed through the white restraints that had begun to scatter and finally landed on the soft edge. Li Nanheng's eyes turned cold. Some of the memories that had been repeatedly overlapping in his mind seemed to have appeared again. This soft touch had once landed on his palm. Even though Feng Ling was unconscious, the drug in her body did not dissipate. Because such a long time had passed, the drug had accumulated in her body to the point where she could not control it. The man's fingertips brushed past, and the coldness in the air and the warmth of the man's fingers caused her body to tremble uncontrollably. The girl's voice also flowed out of her mouth. It was very low and shallow, but in this quiet room, it was slightly hoarse. It floated gently in the air, causing the atmosphere to instantly become ambiguous and confusing. Li Nanheng looked at the girl on the bed. His pair of black eyes that were like ancient wells and deep pools instantly turned as dark as ink, as deep as the sea, with a deep and dark color. Even though he knew that she couldn't take the provocation right now, this little liar's arrogance and lies made him unable to control his hands. Just like that, her fingers moved upwards according to the force she wanted. It was very light, so light that she didn't realize what was happening in her half-asleep state. However, the electric sensation made her tremble all over, and the soft moans in her mouth became more obvious. Under his fingertips, there was an indescribable smoothness and tenderness. The man's breathing became even hotter, perhaps even hotter than hers. His gaze fell inch by inch on the girl's soft, short hair that was pressed against her ear. His eyes then looked at the girl's face, and he couldn't help but lower his head to place a light kiss on the other side of her forehead that wasn't injured. His fingers landed on the softest and roundest part of the girl, holding it in his palms. Even though he knew it was real, he still wondered if something made of silicone could tell whether it was real or not. Who gave her the courage to use that kind of excuse to get away with it? And at that time, he actually King believed it. Feng Ling's unbuttoned clothes became even more disheveled because of the man's movements. On her flat and tight lower abdomen, there was a round outline that would make any man go crazy. Even if it was wrapped in a chest wrap for years, it didn't affect the normal development at all. Instead, because it had been hidden all the time, and because it rarely came into direct contact with the sun, it appeared even more white and tender on the originally white skin. It was clearly real, but it was so perfect and so tempting that people always thought it was fake. It was so tempting that people couldn't control themselves. Feng Ling, who was in a coma, still had a little bit of consciousness. It was impossible that she didn't feel anything at all, but she didn't know what was going on. Her eyelids were heavy, and her head hurt. She didn't even know where she was or who was beside her. She only felt that her whole body was soft as if soaked in a vat of vinegar, and it was a boiling vat of vinegar. Someone was lighting a fire, and it was getting hotter and hotter, as if he was going to cook her. When he heard the girl's unconscious moan again, Li Nanheng's face darkened. He bent down and directly kissed her lips. He sucked and kissed, and then deeply entangled, not letting go of a single inch of her mouth. Feng Ling still didn't know what was going on, but her whole body became even more soft. She didn't have the strength to raise her hands. When she felt the man's hands on her body, she instinctively clenched the bed sheets with force, but she didn't have much strength. Her fingers moved and then didn't move again. She seemed to have such a hot and entangled kiss before. It seemed to be that night on the snow mountain. She had had it. Was it because of this drug that she suddenly remembered it so late? She couldn't open her eyes, and her consciousness was only a remnant. She couldn't tell what was different, but a numb electric current seemed to rise from her tailbone, and she couldn't help frowning and moaning. Usually, Feng Ling maintained her rationality and distance, but now her body was honest enough for the man to do something directly. 17 years old. Maybe she was a few months younger or a few months older. No matter how old she was, at her current age, she was in the budding stage, waiting to be plucked. Every part of her had not been touched by anyone, so she was very sensitive. Even the slightest touch would cause her to tremble and feel uncomfortable. Feng Ling suddenly sobbed under his kiss. She trembled and moved her own legs, which was undoubtedly a kind of instinct. However, this instinct made the man's eyes as hot as fire in an instant, almost burning the still unconscious her. Looking at her legs that he didn't know what she was rubbing, his eyes darkened and darkened. "What do you want?" "En?" The man's voice was very low against her ear. He knew that she couldn't wake up, and he also knew that even if he really did something to her now, she wouldn't have any complaints. He also knew that right now, he really wanted her. But Feng Ling's gender in the base couldn't be exposed. With her temperament, if she knew that her secret had already been known by others, and even he had long known, it would be very difficult for her to survive in the base. She had already suffered a huge shock today, and she had already risked everything to kill someone. In such a state, if she was under other emotional pressure or stimulation, it was difficult for Li Nanheng to guarantee that he could keep her. However, at this moment, the girl suddenly opened her mouth and instinctively panted with a somewhat hoarse breath. Her expression and the flush on her face constantly challenged the man's self-control. Chapter 929. Through her not-so-thick pants, the man pressed down just like that. Just like that. Even though they were separated by their trousers, they were still burned by each other's body heat. The man abruptly took the girl's hand, and he subconsciously wanted to pull her hand down to guide her to do something. However, when he felt the coolness of the ointment under his palm, Li Nanheng's mind suddenly paused. He lowered his head to open her palm and saw the small cut made by the dagger. Although it was not very deep, it had stopped bleeding. He really wanted to make her pay the price for deceiving him for so long. He wanted her to cry on the bed, to call out his name hoarsely with her usual cold and distant voice, and to beg for mercy under his body. But right now, the unconscious and injured Feng Ling could not bear any punishment from him. Seeing her face turn even redder, the man closed his eyes, abruptly pulled away, and went to the bathroom. Under the cold water, the girl's face and body still lingered in his mind, and the cold water could not wash them away. Although this was a cold shower, the heat had subsided for too long. Perhaps if he did not find some way to relieve it, he would not be able to control himself when he went out again. Under the shower, the man closed his eyes. His mind was filled with the young girl's fair and seductive body. The perfect lines of the man's back were taut, and his hands moved faster and faster. He even raised his head, and his slender neck was elongated. His entire person suddenly exuded a wild handsomeness. He recalled the time when he had forcefully grabbed her hand and touched him, and that gentle feeling enveloped him. His hands moved faster and faster. The water from the shower dripped down, and the man's back muscles were tight and powerful. After an unknown period of time, the man suddenly let out a long breath and abruptly leaned back against the cold bathroom wall, letting the water spread out from the shower. When the water turned from cold to hot, he did not take off his shirt, and at this moment his whole body was soaked. He raised his hand to press his forehead that was washed by the water, and his eyes were as deep as an endless abyss. When Lee Nanhung came out of the bathroom, it was already more than half an hour later. The girl was still lying on the bed with her clothes in a mess. She didn't have the strength to move, and her eyes were still closed. Seeing this scene, Lee Nanhung almost felt that all his efforts were in vain. He abruptly turned to the wardrobe to take out a set of light-colored, soft home clothes. After changing into the clothes, he casually wiped the dripping short hair on his head, walked back to the bedroom, and calmly put on Feng Ling's clothes. Lee Nanhung's observation skills had always been extremely strong. The way he dealt with the chest wrapping on her body was undone and wrapped it around her again. In the end, the position where it was fastened was exactly the same as before, so no one would be able to see any flaws. After restoring everything to its original state, the man was about to fetch a basin of cold water to help her wipe her hot and sweaty face. However, the girl's moaning continued, challenging his self-control again and again. Lee Nanhung had thought that his self-control was very strong, especially when it came to women. He had never had any impulses that he shouldn't have. But for Feng Ling, regardless of whether he once thought she was a man or now he knew she was a woman, there was no difference. He wanted her. From the moment he thought he was really gay, these 3 words were clearly written on his face. He had never hidden it, and he was so calm that he didn't worry about any changes. When Feng Ling's clothes were put back on, she was still in the abyss of suffering from the drug. She had no idea that in such a short period of time, she had already been kissed and touched by the man. He had taken advantage of her. Cold. Feng Ling suddenly woke up in a burst of coldness. When she opened her eyes, she was still in a trance. It took her a long time to regain the focus in her eyes, and she looked around in the water in front of her in a daze. It took her a long time to realize that she was sitting in a huge bathtub, and the water in the bathtub was cold. She shook in the water and regained all her consciousness. She looked around with sober eyes and found that this was a strange bathroom. Feng Ling furrowed her brows and was about to get up when from the corner of her eye, she suddenly saw a man's black combat uniform hanging by the side. Seeing that black uniform, she finally let down her guard a little. Whose place was this? Was it Kay's? Or was it a hotel? Feng Ling hadn't stayed in many hotels, so she couldn't clearly distinguish the layout of the bathrooms in apartments or hotels, but she felt that the decoration here was simple and stylish. Everything looked very expensive. Even a piece of tile on the ground was bright and clear. It was definitely expensive. She frowned and wanted to get up from the bathtub, but as soon as she moved, she felt tired all over and couldn't muster any strength. Her head also hurt as if it was about to explode. Some of the memories from yesterday flooded her mind. She closed her eyes and rested for a long time. Her hand accidentally touched a bottle of shower gel, and it fell to the ground. The bathroom door was opened a few seconds later, and a tall man walked in. "You're awake." Hearing this voice, Feng Ling was startled for a moment. She pressed one hand against the flat gauze on her forehead and raised her head to look at the man dressed in home clothes in front of the door. Lee Nanhung usually wore a combat uniform or a simple vest in the base, where he would occasionally change into a more formal suit when he came back from trip. This was the first time she had seen him look so easygoing, especially his clothes, which were soft and comfortable, making him, a man with a hard temper and sharp edges, look much softer and more meaningful. Although Feng Ling admitted that it was because she was biased against him and didn't like him, it was indeed rare to see Lee Nanhung like this. She put down her hand and looked around before asking hoarsely, "Where is this place?" Don't worry about where it is. Are you still feeling uncomfortable? Have you endured the effects of the drug? The man walked over and reached his hand into the bathtub. He then raised his hand and touched her slightly cold face. Feng Ling sat stiffly in the bathtub and looked at him blankly. Wasn't she still in the military area yesterday? And she remembered that she had lost her mind and killed someone. The wound on her forehead was still there, which meant that it wasn't just a nightmare but real. Chapter 9:30. Feng Ling watched the man's gentle and patient profile as he lowered his head to help her fill the tub. She stared at him in a daze and was speechless for a long time. Li Nanheng's hand was still in the water. As he measured the water temperature, he said, "I know you don't like others touching your clothes, so after I brought you back yesterday, I threw you into the water. Come out later and change into clean clothes." With that, the man turned to look at her. In the blink of an eye, because Feng Ling had been looking up, their lips gently brushed against each other. Feng Ling was startled. There was no change in Li Nanheng's eyes. He looked at her stunned face from such a close distance and raised his hand to press her head. After pushing her away, he lowered his eyes to look at her coldly. "You hit your head so hard that you don't remember what happened to you yesterday." Feng Ling's eyes narrowed. "I remember." Li Nanheng watched her. A moment later, he withdrew his hand from the water and stood up. "Take off your clothes and wash yourself in the bathtub. Remember not to let the wound on your forehead get wet." Seeing that he was about to leave, Feng Ling turned to look at him. "Boss." Li Nanheng had already walked to the bathroom door. Without looking back, he said coldly, "If you have anything to say, say it after you take a shower." Feng Ling did not speak again. She lowered her head to look at her clothes. She felt that something was wrong, but it didn't seem to be anything wrong. Yesterday, she was injured on her forehead. Although the blood had splashed on her body, since she had been unconscious last night, the blood on her clothes might have been washed away by the water, and the water had been changed, so she didn't see the blood in the water just now. Furthermore, she seemed to have been wearing these clothes yesterday. Boss wouldn't lie to her about this kind of thing. If he really found out that she was a woman when she was unconscious yesterday, his attitude and expression wouldn't be like this. Feng Ling raised her hand and touched her forehead. The moment her fingers touched the gauze, she remembered what he had told her earlier and turned her wet fingers to the other side of her forehead. It hurt. Yesterday, when she was knocked against the wall, she really thought she was going to die. At the thought of what happened yesterday, the fat commander whom she had personally killed, and Boss Li's calm expression as though nothing had happened, Feng Ling slowly stood up in the bathtub and glanced at the closed bathroom door. Since he didn't take off her clothes last night, it was impossible for him to come in now that she was bathing. She didn't deliberately lock the bathroom door, took off her clothes, and sat in the bathtub again. After a night of soaking in cold water, all that was left was the feeling of helplessness and the discomfort caused by the drug last night. Now that he was sitting in the hot water and taking a good bath, he felt much more comfortable. Not long after, just as Feng Ling was about to get up to grab a towel, a man suddenly approached the door. She paused and turned to look at the figure outside. Then she heard Li Nanheng's voice through the door. "The clothes are at the door. Take them yourself." With that, the man left without any hesitation. Feng Ling's slightly anxious heart fell back to the ground. She got up, wrapped the towel around her body, walked to the door, and gently opened a gap. Seeing that Li Nanheng was not outside, there was only a set of men's pajamas on a square European-style marble flower bed in front of the door. She quickly reached out and took it in. She closed the door, walked to the floor-to-ceiling mirror in the bathroom, and looked at the pajamas in her hand. It was Li Nanheng's size, and it seemed to be a new set. As the weather had turned cold, this pajamas was an autumn and winter style. It was a little thick and fluffy, very loose and large. She hesitated for a moment. Right now, there was really nothing to wear, so she simply put it on. Although the clothes were very large, and the sleeves and trouser leg were so long that they needed to be rolled up several times, fortunately, the clothes were a little thick and very loose. As long as one didn't deliberately pay attention to her chest, it was impossible to see what was going on inside. Originally, Feng Ling was still hesitating about what to do because her chest cloth was also wet. Was she going to wrap it around her body with it wet? Wasn't that waiting for eczema? Seeing that there was no big problem with the clothes, as long as she kept a suitable distance from Boss Lee and didn't let his hand touch her through the clothes, it should be fine. And now this was not the focus. After Feng Ling put on the clothes, she wiped her hair until it was half dry and then shook her soft, ear-length short hair. She didn't need to comb it at all and restored her usual clean and soft hairstyle. She put the clothes into the laundry rack, turned around, and walked out. Outside the window, she saw that the sky was already bright. She didn't know what time it was, but looking at the sun outside, it should be at least 9 o'clock in the morning. Seeing Feng Ling coming out in his clothes, the home clothes that were a little loose on him were even more loose on her, and most of her shoulders and collarbone were exposed. However, because the clothes were relatively thick, the front material of the clothes would not show the outline of her body, and it was convenient for her to continue to cover up the truth that she was unwilling to tell others. Then he caught a glimpse of the girl who had just come out of the shower and looked around because she didn't know where she was, looking a little confused and at a loss. Li Nanheng sat on the sofa, holding an unlit cigarette in his hand. His cold eyebrows moved slightly, and he said indifferently, "This is my place, not a hotel, nor a room under the jurisdiction of the military." Hearing this, Feng Ling's vigilance was greatly reduced. She turned to look at the man sitting on the sofa. She pursed her lips, walked over, and stood in front of the coffee table. She didn't dare to continue to approach the sofa, but just stood straight like a primary school student who was about to be scolded. "Boss, what happened yesterday? There's no need to explain. I've seen the live surveillance in that room and already know what happened." Seeing her aggrieved expression, Li Nanheng said, "You didn't do anything wrong. If it were me, I would probably have killed him immediately instead of enduring until the end." Feng Ling didn't expect this result. She had been mentally prepared that she would take full responsibility for killing the commander and would never put any pressure on 11 Base or implicate the base. "But I killed someone, and he was an important military official." Feng Ling looked at him. "Boss, I know you are very responsible for everyone in the base, but I can bear this matter myself." Although he was still calm, he stared at her even more intently, as if he wanted to see everything about her past through her current honesty. "As far as I can remember, I grew up drinking the milk of a female wolf in a cave in the deep jungle. When I was about 2 years old, I learned to go to the cave to find all the food that could be eaten, so I was not afraid of anything in the jungle. Even everything there was very familiar to me," Feng Ling said softly. "I remember that the base once played an old movie from many years ago. It seemed to be called Tarzan of the Apes. I left after watching it for less than 20 minutes. I didn't continue watching it because at that time, I thought of myself when I was young. If I hadn't been taken away by a few mafias in the United States when I was 5 years old, I might have grown up in the jungle. I might not even be able to speak and only know all the things of the wolf society. Maybe because I was breastfed by a female wolf and grew up in a wolf pack. My character is cold-blooded and inhumane, but after coming to the base, I tried my best to integrate into it, so my character gradually became much calmer. I didn't expect that I would suddenly be stimulated to such an extent yesterday. At that time, I really lost my mind." Li Nanheng did not speak for a long time. Feng Ling knew that anyone who heard of her childhood would doubt whether it was true or not. How could a child walk out of a wolf pack alive? When she was young, she didn't really understand. Later, when she grew up, she began to suspect that perhaps it was because the she-wolf that brought her back to the cave had just lost its pup, or perhaps it was just a coincidence that she threw herself into the she-wolf's arms to drink milk when she was starving. Perhaps, regardless of whether it was wolf nature or human nature, there was some kind of maternal nature between them. Thus, she miraculously survived in the cave and was well protected by the she-wolf. Any other wolf that wanted to eat her or bite her would be attacked by the she-wolf. Although Feng Ling was a human, she had lived in a wolf's cave for as long as she could remember, so she could understand. The female wolf that fed her seemed to be very fierce. The other wolves did not dare to provoke her, so she was able to protect her. Being able to walk out of the jungle alive was something she had never thought of when she was a child. After living outside for so many years, she thought that she had experienced all the dangers in this boundless world. She would not even frown when dealing with such a serious and terrible thing as dealing with all kinds of terrorists. What could she not accept? But yesterday, when she was drugged by the fat commander and pressed under him, she learned that the most sinister thing in this world was the human heart. Li Nanheng did not speak. It didn't mean that he didn't believe it. Only now did he understand why she disguised as a man. If she was taken away by the mafia when she was a child, how could a pure little girl who had never been in contact with any human beings protect herself? Perhaps she could only protect herself by pretending to be a man. It also showed that she kept her distance from him time and time again. She was even indifferent to his confessions. It was not because she didn't like it. It was just because she didn't understand. The silence lasted for a few minutes. Li Nanheng did not speak, and Feng Ling did not move rashly. She just looked at him, her eyes frank and fearless. She did not regret killing people, but she still felt a little guilty because she didn't want to implicate anyone. However, after a long silence, Li Nanheng suddenly sneered and glanced at her with his black eyes. So, I didn't know that a wolf cub had sneaked into 11 base all these years. Feng Ling didn't speak, but just looked at him. Li Nanheng got up, walked up to her, and looked down at her. Feng Ling didn't move, letting him stare at her. She looked calmly at a point on the coffee table and had no intention of avoiding or resisting. Chapter 932. Seeing her obediently not resisting, Li Nanheng looked at her coldly and finally stood by her side, leaned down, and leaned close to her ear. When she was so close to him that her hair stood on end, he said lightly, "Wolves are born loyal. Feng Ling, do you think you're loyal to 11 base?" Feng Ling resisted the urge to avoid him because of the distance between them. She only felt that her ears were burning because of the breath coming out of his nose. "Boss, 11 base is the only place that gives me a sense of belonging. A sense of belonging is equivalent to a home. No one will be disloyal to their home," Feng Ling answered truthfully. The man's low voice was still in her ear, and he didn't seem to have any intention of retreating. Instead, he leaned closer, and his lips almost brushed against her ear. "So, 11 base will not let any loyal member be wronged or humiliated. You don't have to think about this matter anymore. I'll deal with it. Just rest well and don't leave any sequelae of a concussion, okay?" The last word was slightly hoarse. When Feng Ling heard it, she felt the blood in her body churning. The base can keep a loyal soldier, but we definitely won't keep a piece of trash who gives us headaches. So, calm down and recuperate. Don't let your imagination run wild. Feng Ling responded softly, and the man glanced at her loose clothes again. Even though he knew that she wasn't wearing anything inside, not even a cloth wrapping around her chest, he still asked casually, "Are your clothes comfortable?" He was not injured, nor had he just been drugged last night, but she didn't understand why his voice seemed to be covered with a layer of hoarseness when he said this. She immediately moved aside. "It's very comfortable. Thank you, boss. If it's convenient, I can ask Kay to send my suitcase here." She wanted the suitcase for the sake of those pieces of cloth that would get in the way. Li Nanheng didn't expose her, but said indifferently, "Okay, let's recover first. I'll inform Kay later." Then Li Nanheng's phone rang. He asked Feng Ling to go back to the bedroom to rest. Feng Ling turned into the bedroom and closed the door. When she sat on the bed, she looked back at the dark blue bed sheets and quilt behind her and recalled the decoration pattern of the entire apartment when she was looking at this place. In the beginning, she had thought that this was a hotel, but now she knew very well that this was Li Nanheng's residence. Not the residence in the base, nor the Li family, but a place that only belonged to him. The entire apartment was a simple, low-key, and tough male makeup artist. Every place was just right, and every decoration was made the best use of everything. There was nothing cumbersome about it. The bed beneath her was soft and comfortable. She had no memory of what happened after she was knocked unconscious last night, nor did she know whether she had slept on this bed or not. But since Boss Lee asked her to come in to rest, he should not mind her sleeping here. After sitting on the bed for a while, Feng Ling lay down because of a headache. When she covered the quilt, she could feel a faint mint smell on the quilt. She didn't know whether it was the smell of the detergent used to wash the quilt or something else, but it smelled very good and was very similar to the smell on Boss Lee's body. She had just killed someone yesterday and had been uneasy about causing trouble to the base, but now she had calmed down. When lying here, she seemed to have a sense of security that she had never felt before. Her head hurt very much, and she didn't know how long it would take for it to stop. Even now, not only did she feel the pain in her head, but she also felt the obvious pain in the places where she was hit. She didn't know how many hours she slept, and Feng Ling was woken up by Li Nanheng. Boss Lee said that the wound on her head needed to be changed, so she got up. The short-haired girl who had just woken up was a little sleepy, but the long-term training in the base made her sleepy and didn't say anything. She sat by the bed with her sleepy eyes and obediently let the man help her open the gauze and change the dressing. Feeling that the man's movements when helping her apply medicine didn't seem to be very unfamiliar, Feng Ling closed her eyes and asked, "Boss, did you also help me deal with the wound yesterday?" "No, I called the doctor over yesterday. I feel that Boss is very skilled in applying medicine." Li Nanheng looked at Feng Ling, who was sitting by the bed with her eyes closed. From this angle, he could see her long and curled eyelashes when she closed her eyes, which were dense and long, casting a small shadow under the sunlight falling in through the window. There's a saying that if you are sick for a long time, you will become a doctor. Even if you're not sick for a long time, you often suffer from large and small skin wounds, so you should have long learned to bandage yourself. "Do you think I don't even know how to apply medicine?" the man said as he put the clean new gauze left by Chin's sighting yesterday and covered the wound on her forehead that had been applied with medicine. Sometimes he seemed to be a particularly unreasonable man, but at this moment, his movements were so gentle that she didn't feel any pain. Perhaps because this atmosphere was not the same as the usual serious atmosphere in the base. Feng Ling rarely smiled, but only for a moment, and then stopped smiling. After all, she had just caused trouble yesterday, and now she didn't have the courage to smile. Her eyes were closed, and all the expressions on her face were naturally seen by Li Nanheng. The man didn't speak, just helped her apply the gauze on the wound, withdrew his hand, and when he turned to walk out, he said indifferently, "Come out to eat." Since yesterday, she hadn't eaten, so Feng Ling got up and followed him out. She saw 2 dishes and a bowl of rice on the table, which turned out to be the Chinese food she usually liked to eat in the base, but the color of the food seemed a bit strange. But after all, she was hungry, and it was good to have food. Regardless of whether it looked good or not, she sat down at the table, and when Li Nanheng signaled her to eat, she picked up a mouthful of food with chopsticks and put it into her mouth. The expression on Feng Ling's face was a bit indescribable. After slowly chewing a few times, she looked up at the man sitting at the table who was looking at her calmly. "Boss, is this the takeout you ordered?" The man's expression didn't change. "And is the takeout food so bad now?" Hearing it was takeout, Feng Ling dared to make a bold comment. Li Nanheng's expression faltered, and he asked with a self-doubting expression, "Is it bad?" Seeing his expression, Feng Ling's eyes were a bit surprised. "Boss, did you cook this yourself?" Li Nanheng's face darkened. No. Only now did she notice that there seemed to be some residual smell of cooking on the man. Did she say something wrong just now? Feng Ling hurriedly picked up another piece with a strong desire to survive and put it into her mouth. In fact, it's quite delicious. Chapter 9:33. He watched as Feng Ling began to stuff mouthful after mouthful of food in her mouth, as if she had never eaten before. Li Nanheng looked at her with a self-doubting expression. "Delicious. It's delicious." Feng Ling looked up at him and smiled as she ate. To prove that what she said was true, she nodded subconsciously. Li Nanheng did not say more. When Feng Ling was about to finish eating, he saw that she ate very quickly. Was it really delicious? He suddenly picked up his chopsticks and put a mouthful of rice in his mouth. There is less water in the rice, so it is very hard. The man picked up another mouthful of food and put it into his mouth. Seeing Li Nanheng's dark expression, Feng Ling didn't look at him but lowered her head and continued to eat. The man didn't stop her from deliberately supporting him. He only said lightly, "Forget it. Let's order takeout next time." Feng Ling put down the bowl. "Actually, it's really not bad." Li Nanheng sneered. "Stop flattering me. In fact, it was indeed better to order takeout. After all, it was obviously Boss Li's first time cooking. Both dishes were extremely salty. He didn't know how much seasoning and salt had been added. Fortunately, they were both cooked, even a little overcooked, but at least they wouldn't spoil their stomachs. However, Feng Ling's desire to survive was very strong, so she still said, "Look, I'm almost finished. Boss, it's fine as long as I can eat my fill. Don't be so picky." Li Nanheng glanced at her coldly. "Do you think I'm a wild fruit that you randomly picked in the jungle and ate as a meal?" With that said, he suddenly looked at her seriously. "So you could even eat raw meat when you were young? Otherwise, how on earth did you swallow the food I made?" Feng Ling, their eyes met. She looked at him speechlessly for a while, and then looked at the man's home clothes. At this moment, in such a place, far away from 11 Base, far away from so many troubles, in such tranquility, she found that Boss Li's temperament was unique to a playboy from an aristocratic family. It was not bad, but overbearing and impolite. In the end, he was still the young master of the Li family. After taking off the combat uniform of the base, this man was actually a purely non-hung. "I've never eaten raw meat before. I can't eat it. I remember when I was very young, the female wolf who fed me brought me raw meat torn from an unknown beast. I vomited when I saw the bloody thing. I couldn't eat it at all." Li Nanheng glanced at Feng Ling's fair little face. "So how did you survive?" "I ate wild fruits or relied on my survival instincts to find some edible weeds and vegetables nearby. I also drank the mother wolf's milk. In short, I lived until I was about 5 years old. I was very thin when I was brought out of the forest." As she spoke, she picked up another mouthful of food and put it into the bowl in front of her. "So for me, having hot food to eat is enough. I'm not picky." Feng Ling's eyes were calm. Before Li Nanheng had time to feel sorry for her childhood experience, her calm eyes erased those unnecessary thoughts. Everyone's experience was different. Although such an experience was indeed too difficult for a little girl, if it weren't for this, she wouldn't have been able to sneak into 11 Base by chance, and she wouldn't have stayed here and been discovered by him. Or perhaps, for the first time in his life, Li Nanheng didn't have so much courage to imagine how she lived in the jungle for 5 years. Such a small little girl. After Feng Ling finished the food, she put down the bowl and chopsticks. She raised her eyes to see that Li Nanheng had been looking at her, but he didn't say anything more. She looked back at him. "Boss, I've finished the food. If you're hungry, just order takeout. I'm already full." Li Nanheng glanced at the empty bowl in front of her. He didn't know if he should feel sorry for her or laugh at her for eating it. He smiled and suddenly said, "Do you want to see the apartment I bought with your money?" Feng Ling almost forgot about it and subconsciously asked, "Where is it?" "It's downstairs. It's the same size and layout as mine. Because I'm not sure what kind of decoration style you like, I only did a simple decoration to avoid too much trouble in the future. For now, it's not suitable for you to move in directly." Feng Ling paused and looked around in the blink of an eye. If it was the same size and pattern, back then, Li Nanheng said that he would use her money to buy a small apartment for her. But his apartment was at least more than 200 square meters, and it was a duplex. Although she didn't pay much attention, she saw that there was a staircase over there. In this way, it was at least 300 or 400 square meters. If it was the same size, could this be considered a small apartment? Feng Ling didn't know how much it cost to buy an apartment in Los Angeles, nor did she know which street it was, but she felt that the place where Boss Lee lived would definitely not be cheap. She really wanted to ask how much he had spent on the condo for her, but the man got up to answer the phone. Looking at Boss Lee's back when he got up to answer the phone, Feng Ling looked at the utensils on the table, picked them up, and went into the kitchen. After Li Nanheng hung up the phone, he heard the sound of water coming from the kitchen. Seeing that Feng Ling was no longer at the table, he guessed what she was doing, turned, and walked in. He leaned against the door and looked at Feng Ling, who was standing by the sink washing dishes. "Put it there. Don't wash it." The man's voice came. Feng Ling continued to scrub the bowl in her hand, as if she didn't hear it. Seeing that she insisted on washing, Li Nanheng sighed and walked over. "There's a dishwasher. Put inside." Feng Ling saw the dishwasher on the cabinet next to her. Chapter 934. Although the drug in Feng Ling's body had dissipated, the torment last night made her tired easily. After eating, she walked back and forth in the living room for a while and sat on the sofa. Even though it had only been one day, she was still not used to such a leisurely life. When she was in Rogers Pass, no matter how idle she was, she still had a lot of things to do. But now, it seemed that she didn't need to do anything. Even the matter of her killing the military commander didn't seem to require her to show up, nor did she need to settle it herself. When Xiao Fei heard that Feng Ling had an accident in the military base, he had been calling her, but Feng Ling's phone had been turned off. After returning to the base, Kei told him that Feng Ling's phone had fallen into the water before the accident. Even if it could still be used, she probably didn't remember to turn it on. When he learned that Feng Ling had been taken away by Boss Li, Xiao Fei's heart was both relieved and anxious. Feng Ling's condition was so poor right now. If she was brought back by Boss, would Boss find out? Xiao Fei called Li Nanheng, but no one picked up. He took a deep breath and didn't call again. Instead, he sent a text message. "Boss, how is Feng Ling? Do you need my help? I heard that Feng Ling's condition is not very optimistic, and his mood is not very good. As his drill master, I have the responsibility and obligation to comfort him. If it is not convenient for him to return to the base, I will arrange another residence for him. Boss, please answer the phone." Li Nanheng could see Xiao Fei's cautiousness and concern in this message. It could be seen that Xiao Fei had long known Feng Ling's secret, so he wasn't the first to know. The expression on Li Nanheng's face instantly turned from sunny to gloomy. He unhurriedly answered Xiao Fei's call. "Yes?" His casual tone made it seem as though Feng Ling's matter was not on his mind at all, including Feng Ling herself. "Boss, the news that Feng Ling killed the commander has spread in the base. There are different opinions in the base. Of course, most people understand and speak for him, but the leaders of Team 3, who have always been at odds with Feng Ling, said that he will destroy the base, causing a small number of people to panic. Before the matter is completely resolved, don't let him return to the base for the time being. I have a lot of residences outside. He can find a place for him to live." Li Nanheng said indifferently, "No need. She's here with me. It's not suitable for her to return to the base in a short time. I've already told my men about the matter. It will be completely resolved in 5 days at most. Then these 5 days, she will stay here with me. You don't need to worry about her." Xiao Fei took a deep breath. Only now did he truly understand that in a place like the military region or 11 base, a higher-ranking official could easily crush someone to death. He really couldn't say a single word of rebuttal. The girl he liked was now in the palm of Boss Li's hand. Xiao Fei felt that he needed to remind him, "Boss, Feng Ling has always been avoiding you. Maybe it's because you're usually too strict with her. If she doesn't adapt to your place, you can tell me at any time. I'll help her make other arrangements. Don't worry. There's nothing she can't adapt to. It just depends on whether she wants to adapt to it or not." "I'm hanging up." Xiao Fei looked at the call interface that had been stopped, and Li Nanheng's words echoed in his ears. "It just depends on whether she wants to adapt to it or not." Li Nanheng answered a few more calls from the people in charge of the military region and the people in charge of the police handling the murder case. In order not to disturb Feng Ling's rest, Li Nanheng went to the study to answer the phone calls. After several phone calls, he had a rough idea of the matter in his heart. The man walked out of the study, only to see Feng Ling, who was originally sitting on the sofa to rest, but at some point had fallen asleep on the sofa. Li Nanheng walked over and looked condescendingly at Feng Ling, who was in such a poor and fragile state. The short-haired girl leaned against the back of the sofa with her head tilted. Obviously, she had accidentally fallen asleep. She was still wearing his clothes, and most of her shoulders and collarbone were exposed to the air through the wide collar of the pajamas. Just like last night, Li Nanheng really wanted to torture this little girl who had deceived him for a long time. But obviously, it was not the time yet. She hadn't untied the knot in her heart and was unwilling to admit that she also had the soft side of girl. At this time, no matter what he did, he would be forced. Moreover, she didn't know what love was. Although he couldn't restrain himself with her ignorant look, there should be a limit. Love was a two-way arrow. He couldn't just be one-sided. He had to wait until she was willing to take the initiative to face him, and then he would ruthlessly make her cry. The temperature in the room was not very high. Although there was an air conditioner, Li Nanheng didn't like the temperature in the room to be too high. Seeing that Feng Ling was wearing a lot of clothes, her shoulders were still exposed. Perhaps people had a natural instinct to seek warmth. When Li Nanheng bent down and was about to carry her up gently, the little woman in his arms leaned deeper into his arms and rubbed her head against his arm, completely relying on her unconscious instinct to find the source of warmth. Li Nanheng put one hand on her shoulder and the other on her waist. Because she leaned into his arms, he suddenly sat back on the sofa. The girl's body half pressed against him. She didn't wear anything inside except for a layer of home clothes. Everything inside was a vacuum. There was no chest wrapping cloth or anything else. Everything hidden in the clothes was a complete her that didn't need to be sculpted beautiful as white jade. Perhaps it was because the injury on her head was really serious, or perhaps it was because she had soaked in the water for too long last night that she was even more tired than when she was awake. Or perhaps it was because she felt safe here, she was not as vigilant as usual. Even though Li Nanheng was pressed against the sofa by her, she still did not wake up. Instead, she rubbed her head against his chest. Originally, Li Nanheng thought she was pretending to be asleep, but he just sat on the sofa without moving, looked down at the person leaning against his arms, and observed for a while. Only then did he find that her sleeping posture seemed to be treating him as the she-wolf she snuggled against when she was a child. This posture would give her a greater sense of security. Chapter 9:35. Sleeping again and again, he really couldn't stand the boredom. The next day, Li Nanheng went out and only told her to stay at home to recuperate. She was not allowed to go anywhere, so Feng Ling locked herself in the bedroom for the whole day. Other than sleeping, she was in a daze. She didn't watch much TV either. At most, she would occasionally use her phone to read some news that had nothing to do with her. She suddenly remembered her phone. After searching around for a long time, she finally found the phone that had been turned off because of the water. After turning it on, she found that it could still be used, but the battery was less than 10%. She called Kay with the last 10% of power, and Kay was a little emotional on the other side of the phone. "Are you all right?" "Feng Ling, you scare me to death. Why didn't you fight back when that bastard knocked you against the wall?" "I told you not to fight back, but I didn't tell you not to fight back." "You fool. You really scared me to death." Fortunately, Boss arrived in time. Otherwise, the two of us would definitely be dead. Feng Ling did find it strange that Li Nanheng arrived so quickly that day, but she didn't ask. After all, even if she asked, with Boss Li's personality, he probably wouldn't be bothered to tell her. Why did he go in such a timely manner? Now was the time to ask Kay. At that time, Boss was leading an elite team on a mission not far from the military base. He had originally planned to pick us up after the mission ended that day. Kay said, but Boss understood what I meant on the phone. The people from the military region were up to no good. After that, Boss seemed to have rushed over. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come so fast. In other words, from the very beginning, when Li Nanheng agreed to let her go to the military area, it was just a formality. He didn't intend to let her stay there for too long. At first, they said 5 days, but in less than 4 days, they arrived. Should she thank him for saving her? Otherwise, if he really didn't care, she and Kay would have died there. Feng Ling slept for a while in the morning and didn't sleep much in the afternoon. Before leaving, Li Nanheng handed her a password card and key, saying that it was the key to the apartment downstairs. If she was bored, she could go there to take a look, but apart from these 2 apartments, she was not allowed to go anywhere else. She hadn't recovered yet, so she couldn't go out to see the wind. She didn't go down to see the apartment. Anyway, even if she said she wanted to live there, she couldn't live there. Boss Lee said that the apartment was simply decorated and had no furniture. She could only sleep on the floor. 8 o'clock in the evening. Before Li Nanheng came back, Feng Ling locked the door and took a shower in the room, avoiding the wound on her head. Then she came out to dry her hair. When she put on her clothes, she remembered that she forgot to ask Kay to send her suitcase. However, Li Nanheng didn't tell her the address of this place, and she didn't know if Kay knew where she was now, so she could only leave it at that. When she took a shower, she had been paying attention to the wound on her head, so she didn't brush her teeth. There were new toiletries, toothpaste, and toothbrush in the bathroom that Li Nanheng had sent someone to buy yesterday. She picked them up and brushed her teeth. As soon as she put the toothbrush into her mouth, she suddenly heard the door open outside. She looked out and saw that it was Li Nanheng who entered the door. The man's body seemed to carry the cold air outside. He took off his coat when he entered the door, revealing a set of dark gray cashmere sweater and trousers inside. It made the man's originally tall and sturdy figure inexplicably look a little worldly, but also a little gentle and meaningful. Feng Ling quickly brushed her teeth and went out. "Boss." Li Nanheng glanced at her and saw that she had washed up and was ready to sleep. "You didn't go out today?" Feng Ling looked straight at him. "Boss didn't let me go out. Of course I won't go out." It seemed that his orders were always orders and she wouldn't disobey him. She would listen to his orders, but why did she stubbornly oppose him when he asked her to tell the truth? Li Nanheng glanced at her with a faint smile. "And be good. Go to rest. We'll talk tomorrow. I'm tired." She didn't need to guess to know that he would be busy these days because of the military affairs. Even if he didn't say anything, even if he said that she didn't need to care about this matter, the person who died was the commander of the military region. Although he wasn't the best commander, he wasn't a simple character either. This matter definitely couldn't be solved so quickly. Feng Ling didn't say anything, but walked up to him. When she walked up to him, she vaguely smelled the faint smell of alcohol on him. She immediately looked up at him. "Boss, did you drink?" The man's voice was slightly hoarse. He raised his hand and pinched between his brows. "I drank a few bottles with a few old friends from the military. The old men from the Li family also came today. It's fine without them. With them around, I still have to be a grandson when it's time for me to be a grandson." Feng Ling, in front of the elders of the Li family, whether it was public or private, he was a grandson, right? His words sounded as if as long as the elders of the Li family appeared, he would be greatly wronged. What he meant was that as long as the grandfather was around, the grandson couldn't be arrogant. "Go to rest first. I'll go wash up. The smell of alcohol doesn't smell good," he said as he turned to go to another bedroom. Feng Ling didn't follow him. After a moment of silence, she went to the kitchen to pour a cup of warm water and put on the coffee table. Then she turned back to the room. She had just returned to the bathroom to tidy up the foam left after she showered and brushed her teeth. After cleaning up, she was about to go out when she suddenly saw the bedroom door open. Li Nanheng walked in with a toothbrush. "I came to brush my teeth." The man's tall figure walked into the bathroom, and his tone was concise. Feng Ling was startled. "Why did you come here to brush your teeth?" "The toothpaste in my bathroom was used up this morning. When I asked someone to buy it for you, I forgot to buy one for myself." With that, the man picked up the toothpaste she used, and then picked up the cup she used, and began to brush his teeth. Feng Ling stood by the side and didn't say anything. Although she saw that he was using the cup she used, she didn't say anything. After all, it wasn't the first time. She should go out and leave this place to him, but she didn't know what she was thinking. She just watched by the side for a while. After the man brushed his teeth and rinsed his mouth, the man washed his face with cold water and then put his hands on the sink. He said in a low voice, "What are you standing here for?" "I have nothing to do, so I'll just stand here." The man seemed to smile. He suddenly turned his eyes and said hoarsely, "I drank. I know. If you know, why aren't you hiding?" "Hiding from what?" Before Feng Ling could react, the man's breath suddenly approached. Her chin was lifted, and then the man's kiss with the smell of toothpaste suddenly landed on her lips. Chapter 9:36. The man's lips were slightly cold because he had just brushed his teeth and smelled of mint. Feng Ling's expression was a bit dazed. Her eyes froze, and she was about to step back. At the same time, the man also let go of her waist. Looking at the shocked and flustered girl, he smiled. All right, the impulse is over. You can go to rest. Feng Ling, he kissed her so naturally. Did he really treat her as a man? Or did Boss Lee actually like men? Feng Ling stood rooted to the spot. Li Nanheng casually left his toothbrush in her toothbrush cup as though he would come back tomorrow morning to brush his teeth. Then he turned and left. Feng Ling was a bit speechless. She looked at the man's back, but didn't speak. She raised her hand to touch her lips, but didn't touch it. She put her hand down, walked to the bed, and lay back on the bed. What was this? Was Boss Lee openly seducing her? Even if she was a man, it didn't matter if he didn't mind? With this thought, Feng Ling abruptly sat up from the bed. Then wouldn't it be very dangerous for her to live in his apartment? Usually, he was already so arrogant in the base. Now, there were only the two of them here. What if he suddenly ran into her room in the middle of the night? It wasn't that she hadn't seen him act like a beast before. It hurt so much that she didn't want to have that kind of close contact with him again in this life. But after all, it was all in the past. At that time, he was also unconscious. If she couldn't let it go because of that matter, she would be too spoiled. Besides, if he knew that matter, there was no need to say anything about her being a woman. It would be equivalent to directly being exposed. She couldn't say anything. She couldn't do anything. As for just now, he said that he drank too much. So he was just impulsive after drinking too much. Even he admitted that he was impulsive. What else could she say? He would probably forget it tomorrow morning. Early the next morning, Li Nanheng didn't go out today, nor did he cook in person. Instead, he ordered breakfast from a nearby hotel, and it was soon delivered home. After washing up, Feng Ling went out to see Li Nanheng wearing a black uniform, holding a lighter in one hand. He walked back from the floor-to-ceiling window as though he had just smoked on the balcony. Although this man was a heavy smoker, most of the time he smoked, he would choose the occasion. Most of the time, he smoked outdoors, so he would not leave the smell of smoke in the room. Seeing that his eyes were calm and indifferent when he came in from the window, Feng Ling knew that she had thought too much last night. He was just drunk. Come and have breakfast. The man glanced at her and walked over. He pulled out a chair and gestured for her to come over. At the same time, he walked to the opposite side of the dining table and pulled out another chair to sit down. Feng Ling walked over and sat down to eat breakfast quietly. The man also looked at her, who was as quiet and docile as a kitten. His lips curved slightly, but he did not notice it. He smiled too quickly, and when Feng Ling raised her eyes again, it had disappeared without a trace. However, when Feng Ling was quiet, she was like a docile kitten, but when she was angry, she was like a wolf. This was not something that could be found in any woman. The man placed a glass of warm milk in front of her. Drink it. Feng Ling obediently drank up the milk. 2 slices of toast with blueberry jam were placed in front of her. Eat it. Feng Ling hurriedly put aside the fried egg that she had not finished and obediently ate it. Anyway, Boss was outside helping her solve the problem. If she could not help him, the only thing she could do was to be quiet and obedient. She would not cause trouble so that he would not have to worry about her. Seeing that she was so obedient, Li Nanheng really wanted to hold her and kiss her hard. However, when he saw her obedient and somewhat innocent eyes, he temporarily let go of this thought and only asked, "Don't you like blueberries? I specially asked someone to buy this blueberry jam." "Why? You don't like it?" "No, it's just I don't like to eat things like toast. In the past, when I was in the base cafeteria, I would go to the Chinese food counter to eat fried eggs and a bowl of porridge every morning. I don't like bread, toast, sandwiches, and the like. And it's rare for you to take the initiative to speak of your preferences," Li Nanheng said lightly. "From tomorrow onwards, I will change to Chinese food." From his tone, "Boss, well, I have to stay here for a long time. You can't go out before the matter is solved. Especially don't let the military see you alone outside. If you are sensible enough, you will understand what I mean. Even if the military can't gain any advantage in 11 base, as long as you show your head, before everything is completely settled, someone will want to use you as a pretext at any time. What you need to do now is to live here quietly for me, recuperate, and temporarily avoid the limelight. Li Nanheng did not hide anything from her. In fact, he was very frank and told her about the current situation in this way. In this way, at least she knew what to do. She would not be like a reckless man who only knew how to take the blame. In fact, if you really want me to avoid the limelight, I can choose to live elsewhere. You still have to go back to the base and go out to do something. Will it be too troublesome for me to live here? Feng Ling looked at him. Li Nanheng's cold brows moved slightly. Troublesome? Do you think I like living in a base? Who doesn't want to come out and live a quiet life? Since I often go to downtown Los Angeles recently, it's convenient to live here. You can live here. It's not troublesome, and I'm not asking you to sleep in the same bed with me. Feng Ling, boss, I'm not talking about the same thing as you, okay? Chapter 9:37. This is your place. You asked me to stay in the room, so I stayed in the room. I didn't enter the other rooms that weren't open. Feng Ling answered honestly. You really know how to be polite. There's no need to be so restrained. What's mine is yours. Look around and walk around. Feng Ling tried to ignore the words, what's mine is yours, and didn't continue this topic. Which street is this apartment on? Does Kay know this place? Can I ask him to send something over? He knows. Then I'll ask him to come over this afternoon to send something to me. Okay. Li Nanheng knew what she wanted Kay to send, so he didn't say much, nor did he force her to walk around his room dressed like this. Even if she didn't mind the possibility of being discovered at any time, he couldn't stand to see her walk back and forth in front of him every day in a vacuum state between her pajamas. Not everyone could stand the feeling of having to take a cold shower every night before going to bed. In the afternoon, Li Nanheng took the call and went out again. During this time, Kay came over with her suitcase. Kay was not the only one who came. It could be said that the entire sniper team had come, but they were all looking in from outside the door. No one dared to enter the door. Seeing them, including Xiao Fei, Feng Ling was surprised. You? Kay grinned. When they heard that I was coming to deliver something to you, they were really worried about your safety these days. Anyway, today is the weekend, so they all came with me. Where's boss? Why isn't he here? He didn't just leave you here, did he? He's too careless. You're still injured. With that, Kay pointed at the gauze on Feng Ling's head exaggeratedly and said to the others, Look, it's been several days, but the gauze on her head hasn't been removed. How dangerous was the situation at that time? How serious was Feng Ling's injury at that time? The other 3 members of the sniper team nodded, as if they were listening to a story. Xiao Fei looked at her from behind, his eyes filled with heartache. He then looked at Xiao Su, who was rubbing his chin thoughtfully, and Kay, who was making a fuss in front of the door. Feng Ling, since you're all here, come in. Feng Ling opened the door and gestured for them to come in. However, they all shook their heads. Forget it. No one can casually enter boss's place except for you. Feng Ling, that's right. When you were unconscious that day, boss personally carried you up. We didn't dare to follow you in. Kay also nodded hard. The corners of Feng Ling's mouth twitched. I didn't know anything at the time. When I woke up, I was indeed here. I really have to thank boss for taking care of me. But come in and sit. It's okay. If you have anything to say, come in. It's not convenient to stand in front of so many people. Tam poked his head in and carefully looked at the spacious environment inside. Then, he asked in a low voice, Can we go in? Boss isn't here. Will he kick us out? Feng Ling, boss is not here. Kay was surprised. Really? He thought that after boss brought Feng Ling here, he didn't allow her to go out and hid Feng Ling to take care of her alone, but he was not here. He should have gone out to deal with something. Boss is not an idle person. This time, because of me, he will probably be busy for a while. Feng Ling said and turned to walk in. Come in. After confirming that boss was really not here, they quickly rushed in. In the blink of an eye, there were only a few people sitting on the sofa and carpet. The boys in the sniper team directly lay on the carpet or sat down. Xiao Su and Xiao Fei sat on the sofa on the other side. Kay sent Feng Ling's suitcase to the bedroom door before returning to find a place to sit down. Not long after, they got up and walked around the room. When Feng Ling said that there was a room with fitness equipment inside, they went in. Xiao Su also got up and looked around this place. He knew that Bosley lived here, but he had never had a chance to come in. This time, thanks to Feng Ling, he could personally visit Boss's residence outside. How was the wound on your head? When Feng Ling went to the fridge to find fruit to cut for them to eat, Xiao Fei walked into the kitchen. Looking at her back, he could tell that she was wearing Li Nanheng's clothes. Much better. After the surface wound heals in a few days, I may go to the hospital for a simple examination. I have rested well these days. It's not as serious as you think, Feng Ling said while cutting the fruit. How could it not be serious? Although the surveillance footage of her accident in the military area was not spread in the base, the members of the sniper team all saw it. When they learned that Feng Ling was almost insulted by that damn fatty, they were so angry that they wished they could go back to that day and go to the military area to fight with her. Especially when she was hit against the wall several times. If she really didn't resist in the end, she might really die there. Xiao Fei walked over and looked at her clothes. There should be something you want in the suitcase Kay sent you. Didn't Bosley notice anything when you walked around in front of him dressed like this? Feng Ling's hand holding the knife paused. She turned to look at him and thought for a while before saying, Boss and I don't live in the same room. We take showers and do other things separately. Except for eating, we sit at the same table and don't get too close to each other. How could he notice? She had been hiding in the base for so many years. Did she think everything could be so simple to cover up? Although Bosley didn't say it clearly, he obviously knew it or had been guessing. It was impossible that he didn't know anything at all. Xiao Fei sighed and reached out to take the knife in her hand. There's no need to cut the fruit. They won't eat it even if you cut it. Just leave it. They're all here to see you. Chapter 9:38. But leaving the base didn't mean that they wouldn't meet again in the future. The Chow family was also in Los Angeles. If there was a chance, they could have a meal together occasionally. Feng Ling didn't feel too sad and just nodded. You really have a bland temperament. Xiao Fei sighed and raised his hand to rub her soft hair. Feng Ling had always been very grateful to Xiao Fei for taking care of her, but she didn't know how to express it, especially when others were good to her. She was grateful, but didn't know how to thank them. In the evening, Li Nanheng came back. When he entered the door, he saw that although the carpet was neatly tidied up, it was still different from when he left during the day. There were also fruit plates and other things on the sofa. Kay came this afternoon. He glanced at the suitcase standing in front of the bedroom door. In he came. The other members of the sniper team also came to take a look. No wonder. Li Nanheng looked at the messy carpet. It looks like it has been trampled by a group of wild monkeys. Feng Ling, wild monkeys? Xiao Su had seen Xiao Fei talking to her outside the kitchen. Later, when Xiao Fei left with the sniper team, Xiao Su walked past her and said, Your great sage, heaven's equal, is by your side. Don't be blinded by a wild monkey. She laughed for a long time because of these words. Xiao Fei was, after all, the deputy drill master of the base and came from a prestigious family. He was tactful and considerate, unlike Tam, Kay, and the others. If they were like monkeys, they were like the others. Even if Xiao Fei was one of them, he was definitely the military counselor of the monkeys. He was gentle and steady. I've tidied up. It may look different from when you left. Let me tidy it up again. Feng Ling said, and was about to go over to tidy up the carpet. As soon as she walked over, Li Nanheng, who was standing by the carpet, suddenly grabbed her collar and stood up. Caught off guard, she stumbled and abruptly bumped into his arms. The man casually pressed her shoulder, causing her to throw herself into his arms. The man held her shoulders and looked down at the furry head in his arms. He raised his hand and touched her hair again. I'm not blaming you for messing up the house. Why are you in such a hurry to clean it up? Why did his tone sound like he had a mischievous little wife at home who needed him to worry about, and was hurrying to coax her after returning home? Feng Ling quickly moved away from his arms and looked up to see that he was looking down at her in a good mood. The girl had taken advantage of his absence to wrap her chest cloth again. She had also changed her clothes into the white short-sleeved t-shirt that she usually wore. It was no longer as loose as it was a few days ago, and it no longer exposed her shoulders and collarbones. But Li Nanheng found that his infatuation with her didn't seem to be just physical. Even though she looked like this, as long as he approached her, he seemed to have some reaction. If it weren't for the light in the living room being too bright, if it weren't for her clear eyes, he would have done something. This time, he couldn't use drinking as an excuse. After all, he didn't smell of alcohol at all today. So the next time he wanted to do something bad, should he buy a bottle of wine in the supermarket downstairs and drink a few mouthfuls before coming up? Just as he was thinking, the doorbell suddenly rang. Li Nanheng looked at her. "Who did you call over?" "Feng Ling." "No, they went back in the afternoon, and I don't think they will come back again. They're afraid of being taught a lesson by you. How could they come here and put themselves in danger?" What she said made sense. Those brats dared to come in for a few hours because he was not here. Who else could it be at this time? Li Nanheng turned to open the door. Feng Ling didn't think much, squatted down, and continued to lay the carpet. Not long after, she heard the door being opened. Suddenly, seeing the woman standing outside the door, Li Nanheng's eyes were cold. "Why are you here?" When Feng Mingzhu saw that the person who opened the door was really him, she immediately smiled happily. "I heard that something happened to your 11 base recently. You didn't return to the base recently, but lived outside. It seems that it's true. You are actually here." The Feng family and the Li family had always been connected. The Feng family would naturally know that there was a conflict between 11 base and the military. It was not surprising that Feng Mingzhu would hear about this. "How did you find this place?" "Following me?" Li Nanheng stood in front of the door and had no intention of letting her in. His eyes were cold, without warmth, and he was not polite. "If I had the ability to follow you without being discovered by you, I would have followed you long ago." Feng Mingzhu stuck out her tongue slightly at him, gentle with a bit of playfulness, happiness, and faint expectation. "I heard that you are here, but I don't know which building you live in. My car is parked downstairs. Just now, I saw you driving back and parked next to my car. Then I followed you in and saw that the elevator stopped on the 10th floor. I guessed that you should live on the 10th floor, so I came to give it a try. I didn't expect that I would really find you." He had never been interested in Feng Mingzhu's past, nor was he familiar with her car. There were all kinds of luxury cars in this apartment, so he didn't pay attention to which cars were parked next to the parking lot. He was always on guard against the people in the military, but he actually forgot to guard against the myths of the Feng family who try to find ways to see him every day. "Can I come in?" Feng Mingzhu almost couldn't hide the little excitement in her eyes because she really hadn't seen him for a long time. Usually, he was either at the base or returning to the Li family to deal with some urgent matters. He never stayed in other places for long. She had no chance to see him at all, and after he refused to marry her, she didn't even have a chance to talk to him. In the middle of the night, a man and a woman alone. There's really no need to go in. Li Nanheng didn't mean to move away from the door, nor did he give her a chance to take the opportunity to enter the door. He just said coldly, "If you have something to say, say it here." Feng Mingzhu looked at him, and the smile and excitement in her eyes gradually cooled, but the love in her eyes was still so obvious. She clenched the bag in her hand, and at this moment, her temper completely disappeared, leaving only the shyness and unconcealable love of a little woman. "I just want to come to see you." Although she had a lot of things to say, Feng Mingzhu knew that he hated troublesome women who talked too much, so she could only hold it in. She just wanted to open up a channel of communication with him and not be unable to see him again. "You've seen me. Can you go now?" Li Nanheng really had no patience for women like Feng Mingzhu, and his eyes were full of impatience. Chapter 9:39. Is it inconvenient for you? Feng Mingzhu looked thoughtfully at his indifferent and impatient expression, and her eyes were about to look inside the door. However, the man's figure was tall and straight. Even though she was wearing high heels, she still couldn't reach his shoulders. She could only look up and see the beautiful chandelier inside. She couldn't see anything else. Feng Ling was squatting on the ground to lay the carpet and did not pay attention to what was going on outside. She looked back and saw that Boss Li seemed to be talking to someone in front of the door. In case she disturbed him, She got up and returned to the bedroom. There's nothing inconvenient about it, but if Miss Feng enters the door, it will be truly inconvenient. The man's tone was distant and indifferent. Feng Mingzhu squeezed her bag and stared into his eyes. Originally, she wanted to approach him step by step, but it seemed like he didn't want to see her again. She bit her lip and said, "Nanheng, just let me in. Let's talk. It's not convenient to talk in front of the door." "What do you want to talk about?" The man casually leaned against the door frame with one hand in his trouser pocket and said casually, "Let's talk about us." Feng Mingzhu paused and said, "Nanheng, after all, we were engaged. No matter what the reason was, we met so many times when we were young. When we were teenagers, I remember one New Year's, we went to the Li family as guests. I couldn't sleep at night, so I went out for a walk alone. In the end, I accidentally fell into the underground storage used by the servants behind the Li family. I was locked up for several hours, and no one found me. It was you who found me and saved me. From then on, I always hoped that I could grow up quickly, because only when I grew up can I marry you. Nanheng, Feng Mingzhu had never been so excited before because she had waited for him for so many years. She had always thought that he liked her. When he rescued her, she was already frozen. His embrace was so warm, he was so tall, and the Feng family said that the Feng family and the Li family would be connected by marriage in the future. She had long placed all her heart on him. She didn't like any of the other men who tried to pursue her. She only had him in her heart. Li Nanheng put his hands in his trouser pockets and looked at her indifferently. "I need to correct one thing. The Feng family and the Li family have an engagement, but there is no engagement between you and me, and there is no such thing as refusing an engagement. Miss Feng and I are just family friends. There is nothing else. I'm the only daughter of the Feng family. Do you have to be so serious?" Feng Mingzhu suddenly felt suffocated. "You are the only daughter?" Li Nanheng asked coldly. Feng Mingzhu held her breath. "Are you really going to marry my dead sister? Are you really going to marry a cenotaph?" She was only 1 year old when the accident happened. "Nanheng, what did I do that made you rather marry a child who died more than 10 years ago than give me a chance? I have never offended you, nor have I pestered you. I have never hidden my love for you. I know you don't like people who beat around the bush, so I am very straightforward. I like you. I have rejected so many people. Even if you're not willing to marry me, I'm still waiting for you." The man leaning against the door tilted his head and lit a cigarette. He held it between his slender fingers and said casually, "If you're only here to talk about feelings with me, then you don't have to say anything." All of a sudden, Feng Mingzhu understood something from his expression, as if she had been splashed with a basin of cold water. All her pride and confidence were immediately extinguished. "You have someone you like?" She almost choked out. Li Nanheng didn't answer. He just glanced at the time on his wrist and said indifferently, "You don't need to know too much. Just remember 2 things. First, I have no responsibility to you. Whether you like me or not is your own business. I don't need to be responsible for it. Second, don't try to find me. It's meaningless to see me. Nanheng, Besides, the young lady of the Feng family is a goddess in the Chinese community of Los Angeles. You don't have to lower your status because of me. You said that you rejected many people's pursuits because of me. That's really an insult to me." Feng Mingzhu looked at him, her eyes a little red, and then she sneered softly. "Young Masterly, do you have to be so modest? If any of the people I rejected could be half as good as you, my love life wouldn't be so distressed. Someone once said that when people are ignorant about love, they should never meet the best person. Otherwise, their love will always go downhill in the future. You're the best person I have ever met. I didn't even consider others. I have been waiting for you, but in the end, you didn't even give me a chance." Li Nanheng took a deep look at her because of her words. "Your wishful thinking and inexplicable waiting want me to suffer moral blackmail?" Feng Mingzhu held back her tears and lowered her eyes to say, "No, I just didn't expect that you really didn't have any feelings for me at all. I don't think I'm worse than anyone else. I'm really curious about what kind of woman can enter your eyes. Does she have to be as beautiful as a fairy?" Li Nanheng suddenly thought of a girl who had just bumped into him in his arms, and the feeling of the girl's soft, fluffy hair in his palm. It wasn't that Feng Ling hadn't worn women's clothes before, but those 2 times, she was either in a flashing private room or in a bar with heavy makeup. He didn't know if she was as beautiful as a fairy, but he knew that even if she had short hair and wore a black uniform, just standing there and calling out boss, he would get hard. Go back. Don't come here again, Li Nanheng said, didn't look at her again, went back to the door, and mercilessly closed the door. Feng Mingzhu watched as the door was closed. She had waited for so long and finally had a chance to meet him, but it ended just like that. Feng Mingzhu reluctantly looked at the door number and the password lock outside the door. She and Li Nanheng were so unfamiliar that she couldn't even guess a 6-digit password. She knew his birthday, but he certainly wouldn't use it as a password, and she didn't know anything about him, such as numbers and hobbies. Just like the closed door in front of her, he never gave her a chance to step in. Chapter 940. Li Nanheng returned to the room and saw that the carpet had been laid flat by Feng Ling. He walked in. The bedroom door was not locked. Feng Ling had just picked up her phone and was about to lie on the bed when she heard his footsteps. Your phone can still be used? Li Nanheng glanced at the thing in her hand. Feng Ling nodded and waved the phone in front of him. It could be used. Boss, you brought me to buy this phone last time. At that time, it was said that it was waterproof. However, it might have been soaked in the water that day, so it couldn't be turned on. Now the water in the phone has dried up. It's fine. If you can't use it, buy another one. It works. It's no different from before. In order to prove that the phone was still working, Feng Ling raised the phone screen for him to see. An American military movie was playing on the screen. It had just started. It could be seen that she was just about to watch it. Other than this kind of movie, what else do you like to watch? Li Nanheng suddenly felt that on the way to pursuing Feng Ling, perhaps he could use some vulgar tricks that couldn't be more vulgar. After all, she had never experienced it before. He could just treat it as compensation for the experiences she had missed when she was young. No matter how vulgar and childish it was, he could accompany her. For example, he could take her out to watch a movie. I don't like it. Kate recommended it to me, so I can't have a look. As Feng Ling spoke, she held her phone and sat on the bed. She took off her shoes and placed her bare feet on the bed. When Li Nanheng saw her pair of white and tender little feet, his dark gaze shifted slightly and landed on her phone again. He recommended this kind of movie to you? Kay said that it's not that men don't scheme against each other. He told me to watch more movies and learn the tricks in them. Li Nanheng. Feng Ling's phone was suddenly taken away by the man. She raised her eyes to look at him in confusion. What do you mean by scheming? That boy really doesn't teach you in a good way. You've been with him for so many years, but you haven't been led astray by him. You're really lucky. With that, Li Nanheng threw her phone aside. If you can't sleep, come with me. Feng Ling got off the bed and followed him out. Li Nanheng took her to the room with fitness equipment. After turning on the light, he asked her if she had come in to practice. Feng Ling shook her head. I haven't exercised for a few days, so I can't go overboard when I suddenly resume exercising. Otherwise, it will be counterproductive. The man walked to the treadmill and pressed a few buttons on it. The machine beeped as he adjusted the speed and mileage. Jog for 10 kilometers first, then do balance training on the spot. Neither of these movements would affect the injury on her head, and her brain wouldn't move too fast either. Although it was already night, Feng Ling couldn't fall asleep. Boss had arranged physical training for her in a different way. Although there wasn't as much equipment as in the base, it was still good. Feng Ling waited by the side without any objections. However, after the man pressed the treadmill for a while, he said expressionlessly, I haven't used it for a long time. I don't even know the machine is broken. Feng Ling, then can't we run tonight? Go out and do balance training first. I'll see what's wrong, the man said while checking the treadmill. Feng Ling nodded obediently and turned to go out. She looked around the living room and finally returned to the carpet she had just laid, lying on it to do balance training. However, when she pushed her limbs against the ground, she felt that her head also hurt. Although the injury on her forehead didn't hurt so much, when she pushed her head up, she felt a pain in her brain. She closed her eyes to endure the pain, But after a while, she climbed back to the carpet and raised her hand to put it on her head. After a minute's rest, she propped up her limbs again and began to do exercises. After repeating this several times, she finally recovered a little bit. At this moment, the doorbell rang again. Feng Ling turned her head to look at the door and then at the man who was repairing the treadmill inside. He didn't seem to hear it. Someone had been here just now. Although she didn't know who it was, those who knew this place were probably acquaintances, so there shouldn't be any problem. She got up, walked to the door, and opened it. The moment she opened the door, Feng Ling's expression remained calm. But when the woman outside the door saw Feng Ling, her expression changed instantly. "Why is it you?" Feng Mingzhu looked at Feng Ling in astonishment. This brat named Feng Ling didn't give her face in the mall that time, which made her so angry that she wanted to smash her bag on his head. However, she felt that there must be a reason why Li Nanheng didn't let her in. Even if he didn't like her, he wouldn't even let her in unless there was someone else in his home. She just wanted to confirm if he was hiding a woman at home, but she didn't expect that it would be Feng Ling who opened the door. Feng Ling didn't expect to see this Miss Feng here, but Feng Ling didn't care. After glancing at her, she turned back and walked in expressionlessly, saying to the room inside, "Boss, someone is looking for you." Feng Mingzhu took the opportunity to follow Feng Ling in and quickly glanced around the apartment she had never been in before. There were no women's things, and most of them were purely masculine. The colors were neat and tidy, and there was not the slightest bit of mess. There was some sweat on Feng Ling's forehead, and he was slightly out of breath, but it could be seen that he had just done some simple exercise. So there were only 2 men in the apartment, and no woman, as she thought. Feng Mingzhu temporarily put down a worry in her heart, but she still looked at Feng Ling in confusion and asked, "Why are you here? Aren't you a member of the base? Why don't you train in the base or go out on missions? Why do you live in his place?" When Li Nanheng came out, he heard Feng Mingzhu's aggressive voice outside. He walked out and said in a clear voice, "Can't you see that Feng Ling's head is injured? A member of the base recuperating here is an eyesore to you, Miss Feng." Feng Mingzhu turned to look at Li Nanheng and then at the room behind him. Through the open door, she saw that there were fitness equipment inside, and her eyes immediately became much gentler. "Nanheng, I wanted to leave just now, but after thinking about it, I felt that it was rare for us to meet, so What do you mean? Was I too polite to make you mistakenly think that I was being patient with you? Or did you think that I wouldn't throw you out?" You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.